Novel Empire. Immortal God of Battle. Chapter 181. Draw Hatred. Xiang Nan sprinted wildly, his body transforming into shadows, rapidly shuttling between the numerous volcanic craters. Flying was definitely not as fast as sprinting over. The Fish King chased after him relentlessly, jumping from one volcano crater to another, jumping back and forth in pursuit. The little bird stood on Xiang Nan's shoulder, raising its head high and pointing its wings at the Fish King behind it. "You haven't had enough." Xiang Nan scolded angrily, "You still want to eat the Fire Eagle inner pill? You were lucky enough to survive just now. Don't take such a risk again." Just now, the little bird had clearly died for a short period of time. To be able to survive was simply the blessing of the heavens. After all, its little bird was only at the first level of origin return. Swallowing the inner core of a demonic beast at the 5th level of origin return was a life-threatening act. Xiang Nan thought that he was already a master who dared to pull out his teeth and steal a cub from a wolf's den without fear of death. He didn't expect that the little bird was even more powerful than him and didn't know what death was. The Fish King chased after him reluctantly. As Xiang Nan sprinted wildly, he chopped out streaks of saber light from behind. The blade light of the 1st level of origin return encountered a demonic beast of the 5th level of origin return, which was still a fire-attributed demonic beast. Its effect was almost zero. If it weren't for Xiang Nan cultivating the vast heaven pure essence technique, the saber light wouldn't even be able to get close to the fire fish's body and would have been dispersed by the demonic energy. As for this vast volcanic region, it was unknown how big it was. Xiang Nan had already been running at full speed for nearly 5 minutes, and there were still craters large and small ahead. As for the fire fish, because it was too large, every time it jumped, it would jump over 200 to 300 meters in length, quickly closing the distance between it and Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan didn't have a suitable martial skill that could force the Fish King back in an instant. "Damn it, do I need to use the Sun God technique again?" Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and became ruthless in his heart. However, the higher the frequency of using the Sun God technique, the higher the probability of becoming enchanted. Right now, no one around him was able to save him. At this critical moment, when Xiang Nan was already preparing to circulate the Sun God technique, a huge demonic beast suddenly pounced out from a huge volcano crater in front of him on the left. It was actually a fire lizard 50 meters long. This thing crossed Xiang Nan and directly bit the 100-meter-long Fish King in one bite. Although the flaming lizard was twice the size of the Fish King, there seemed to be some kind of poison in its teeth. The Fish King struggled to slap his body. In just 2 seconds, large patches of purple spots quickly spread out from the part that was bitten by the lizard. Immediately after, the entire fish was completely swallowed up by the purple mark and remained motionless. Seeing that the fire lizard was busy eating the Fish King's body, Xiang Nan heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Are all the demonic beasts growing in this damned place so big?" Thinking of this, Xiang Nan felt his scalp go numb. The one he wanted to steal was the 7th level Guiyuan fire python egg. After such a torment, Xiang Nan also ran out of the Flame Mountain Pass area and discovered that the terrain in front of him had changed. The cracked ground was still flowing with boiling magma, but the temperature was even higher than the crater area. Made it difficult for Xiang Nan to even breathe. In front of him stood a series of hollow stone pillars. Those stone pillars were conical in shape, and black smoke was emitting from the openings at the top. Xiang Nan was a little more careful as he slowly shuttled through the pillars of flames, searching for the snake's den. After walking about 10 miles, a rectangular stone pillar suddenly rose from the ground, attracting Xiang Nan's attention. That thing was said to be a stone pillar. It was more like a giant mountain with a strange shape. At the foot of the mountain, there was a cave that was 100 meters tall. Inside the cave, there was a huge creature that was slowly breathing at an extremely slow speed. Every time he inhaled from the cave, Xiang Nan would feel a strong attraction, pulling him towards it. Every time he exhaled, he would spit out a blazing wave of qi. This wave of qi was fishy and smelly, causing one to feel nauseated. I think I found it. Xiang Nan sensed the fishy smell unique to snakes, so he wiped his eyes and used the lightning photoelectric eye. He saw a giant python coiling around the pitch-black cave. The python's body was burning all the time. This was because the body of the blazing fire python was coiled, and it was unknown how long it was. At this moment, Xiang Nan was beginning to regret it. Such a mission worth 100 credits was not compatible with its danger level. Little Sparrow. Xiang Nan pointed at the cave and said, "I'll lure it out later. You should take the opportunity to steal the egg. You should know what a snake egg looks like, right?" The little bird pointed at the cave with its wings and then at itself. "You want to lure the blazing fire python?" "No, it's too dangerous," Xiang Nan said. The bird raised its head and flew out with a whoosh. It turned into a flaming shadow and circled around the sky for dozens of times before landing on Xiang Nan's shoulder. Then, it pointed at the cave with its wings. So fast. Xiang Nan's heart skipped a beat. After the bird turned red, its flying speed had actually increased by a large margin. The Gale Sparrow was already flying fast, but now that its speed had increased again, it was already beyond Xiang Nan's reach. "Alright, since you insist on doing this, I'll let you do it. No matter how powerful the blazing fire python is, it can't fly, right?" Xiang Nan nodded. He saw that the little bird flew to the vicinity of the cave and began to chirp in the cave. As a result, the blazing fire python didn't even bother to look at it, so it didn't even plan to get up. The little bird puffed out a wind blade. The wind blade also changed its appearance, turning into a state of being wrapped in fiery flames. With a slap, it smashed into the forehead of the fiery python. One was at the first level of the origin realm, and the other was at the 7th level of the origin realm. The burning sewing did not even move the eyelids of the blazing fire python. "It's broken." Xiang Nan frowned. The blazing fire python simply ignored the little bird. At this moment, the little bird made a gesture that made Xiang Nan's soul shatter. It actually swaggered onto the fire python's face, walked all the way to its forehead, and took a blister of bird shit as if nothing had happened. I'll go." Xiang Nan's heart was raised. This little bastard actually pulled on hatred. Demonic beasts, especially those with higher cultivation bases, had greater dignity. The blazing fire python couldn't bear it any longer. A pair of scarlet snake eyes slowly opened and 2 red pillars of light shot out from the cave. "Little Sparrow, run!" Xiang Nan roared. Whoosh! The little bird also knew that it had done a good job. In an instant, it turned into a red shadow and rushed out. There was a fire line in the air along its rapid flight. Immediately after, an incomparably fierce suction force came from within the cave. Outside, 7 to 8 meters tall pillars of flame stone broke apart and were sucked into the cave. The little bird had originally flown extremely fast, but now, it was pulled back by the suction force. It struggled to flap its wings, but it could only move forward at a slow speed. Just as the suction force was about to end, a 100-meter-long python suddenly shot out from the cave, aiming straight at the little bird. Chapter 182 Combination of Two Lowly Things. How could Xiang Nan give up such a precious opportunity? He sprinted into the cave as fast as he could. He turned around and saw that after the suction force disappeared, the little bird immediately recovered its speed and turned into a line of fire and flew away. The giant blazing fire python's jumping power was also incomparably astonishing. It jumped a full 1,000 meters away. That speed was practically the same as the little bird that had been transformed. One bird and one snake disappeared from Xiang Nan's field of vision in a flash. "Little sparrow, you must definitely succeed in escaping." Xiang Nan endured the blazing waves of fire and rushed into the cave. The temperature inside was incomparably high. Xiang Nan had enveloped himself with a layer of yuan qi shield. He still felt that it was blazing hot and difficult to handle. He felt that his skin was about to melt. He didn't care much about it and continued to run rapidly in the cave until he reached the innermost part of the cave. Only then did he discover snake eggs. Strange, the python was 100 meters long, but its egg was only the size of a watermelon. It seemed that the blazing fire python was not born with a large body. It should be born with a higher cultivation realm, and its body would grow along with its cultivation realm. That was what Xiang Nan thought, but he didn't have time to spare. He hugged a boiling snake egg and rushed out of the cave as fast as he could. Once they left the cave, they would rise up from the ground and unfold their enormous yuan qi wings to ascend into the sky. It was useless to escape from the flaming python that could not fly. He could only fly high up. The higher it flew, the safer he would be. "Little sparrow." Xiang Nan succeeded and let out a sharp whistle. In the distance, the little bird chased by the blazing fire python took a big turn and climbed up into the sky. In less than a breath, it had pierced through the clouds and continued to climb up. Xiang Nan hurriedly flew over to meet up with the little bird. At this moment, the clouds below surged. Suddenly, an incomparably large snake head rushed out from the sea of clouds. F***ck jumped so high. Xiang Nan was shocked and hurriedly climbed up again. The blazing fire python must have climbed a high mountain just now to jump out of the clouds. "Get out of the way." Xiang Nan grabbed the bird and threw it out. At the same time, the fire python that was hovering in midair spat out a pillar of fire that pierced through the 9 heavens. Fortunately, Xiang Nan predicted in time and threw the little bird out. Otherwise, one person and one bird would probably be roasted. "Rise again!" Xiang Nan shouted, and both of them continued to climb, penetrating another layer of higher clouds. The blazing fire python was finally unable to reach this height, and fell down angrily. Xiang Nan heaved a sigh of relief. The blazing fire python's snake egg was already in his possession. Next was the Qingling powder. The Qingling powder was the food of the three-eyed Qingling eagle, which was also called saliva. As he spoke, Xiang Nan's voice stopped abruptly. He suddenly discovered that there was a strange cliff towering into the clouds in the distance. "That cliff is so high." Xiang Nan's eyes widened in surprise. That bare cliff was incredibly steep, and it had actually reached such a terrifying height, yet he still hadn't seen the end. So tall, the three-eyed clear spirit eagle's nest must be inside. Xiang Nan took a deep breath, but was caught in a dilemma. The blazing fire python was easy to deal with, but the three-eyed clear spirit eagle could fly. Xiang Nan looked at the bird and frowned. "Let alone me, even you are not as fast as the three-eyed clear spirit eagle. This is really troublesome." The little bird stood on Xiang Nan's shoulder and pointed at the cliff with its wings. Then, it jumped around and pointed at the cave of the blazing python. Xiang Nan suddenly understood and used his hand to gently scratch the little bird's forehead. "You're so smart. Well, you go lure the snake. I'll go to the cliff and wait for the opportunity." After discussing the countermeasures, the little bird flew down from the clouds and continued to provoke the fire python that was about to reverse its nest. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be able to withstand such a provocation. The blazing fire python was about to go mad with anger. Originally, it had planned to return, but when it saw the little bird circling in the sky, it stared at the blood-red eyes and chased after him again. The little bird led the python all the way to the bottom of the cliff. When it was within 10 miles of the cliff, it did not dare to approach it again. Presumably, the blazing fire python also knew whose territory that cliff was. Seeing that the blazing fire python was timid, the little bird puffed a bubble of bird shit down. However, this move no longer worked, and the blazing fire python refused to approach the cliff. At this moment, Xiang Nan descended from the clouds. He held the snake egg in his arms and shook it at the blazing fire python. The blazing fire python's body stiffened, and its eyes were filled with anger. The little bird was even more extreme. It directly jumped onto the snake egg and pecked at the snake egg twice with its beak. This frightened Xiang Nan so much that it mustn't peck the eggshell. Sure enough, the blazing fire python went crazy all of a sudden. He jumped up with a whoosh. The little bird immediately flew towards the cliff and wrapped its legs around the snake egg from Xiang Nan's hand. As it dragged the snake egg flying, it lowered its head and pecked at the snake egg a few times. The blazing fire python was both shocked and furious. It had completely lost its rationality. With a boom, the snake head fiercely smashed into the little bird. The little bird dodged, and behind it was a cliff. The cliff was originally very isolated, so being hit by the blazing fire python caused the entire cliff to tremble. Xiang Nan looked up into the sky, and then he saw a black shadow that covered the sky and the earth, silently leaning against the cliff, flying down vertically. This scene made Xiang Nan's scalp go numb, and the three-eyed clear spirit eagle moved out. His vision was too shocking. Within the vast sea of clouds, a shadow that covered the sky and covered the sun quietly slid down. What a shocking scene it was! After piercing through the sea of clouds, the three-eyed clear spirit eagle saw the blazing fire python crashing into the cliff with a single glance. Snakes and eagles had always been natural enemies that could not tolerate fire and water. The giant eagle with a wingspan of 100 meters swooped down fiercely and attacked the blazing fire python that dared to charge into its territory. Fortunately, this three-eyed clear spirit eagle was only at the 6th level of the origin realm. It was a small realm lower than the blazing fire python. With such an eagle and a python, it could still fight for a while. Otherwise, the three-eyed clear spirit eagle would probably be able to peck the blazing fire python to death. Xiang Nan took the opportunity to fly high up into the thin air before he saw a huge bird's nest at the top of the cliff. He jumped in. There were still a few little eagles waiting to be fed, licking the translucent liquid in the bird's nest. "Sorry, little fellows, I'll just take a little. I won't take all of them." Xiang Nan knew that the clear spirit powder was made from the essence of the clear spirit eagle. It was extremely precious. Without the clear spirit powder, the little clear spirit eagle would definitely not be able to survive if it only ate raw meat. Xiang Nan took out the empty porcelain bottles. He only took out 2 bottles of Qingling powder and immediately retreated. There were still 2/3 of Qingling powder left. This was also Xiang Nan. If it was any greedy martial artist, they would probably have taken all of them. One must know that Qingling San was an expensive ingredient for refining pills. Little sparrow, let's go. Xiang Nan greeted him and put Qingling into his storage ring, making it easier for the little bird to sneak away together. Down below, the hawk-snake battle finally ended with the blazing fire python wounded and escaping. Chapter 183 War. It was still not safe in Hundred Beast City. Perhaps that brat spies were still searching for him. Xiang Nan did not rashly enter the city. Instead, he sent a message to the person in charge of the auction house. Half a day later, an auction house disguised as a caravan of horses quickly galloped out of the city and arrived at the location of Xiang Nan. From afar, someone jumped out of the car. It was the person in charge of the auction house. He quickly trotted over, his eyes filled with eagerness. After Xiang Nan took out the blazing python egg, the person in charge heaved a sigh of relief. He carefully stored the egg and then tightened his grip on Xiang Nan's hands. Thank you for saving my daughter's life. With this snake egg of the blazing fire python, my daughter's life will be saved. Don't say anything. Xiang Nan patted the back of the person in charge's hand and said, Baisho City hasn't been peaceful lately. Just be careful. Hurry up and go back to treat Ling Qianjin's illness. The person in charge cupped his fists and cupped his hands at Xiang Nan. Great kindness is not unforgettable. I won't send a hero far away if he goes well. Seeing the person in charge of the convoy walk far away, Xiang Nan nodded. He took out the map and saw the direction, then said, Little sparrow, continue on your journey. After Xiang Nan obtained the spirit cleansing powder he needed from the 100-beast cliff, his next task was to search for the missing disciples of the cavalry sect in the northern wilderness swamp. The primordial swamp was a famous place of great viciousness in the Haotian Empire. The demonic beasts inside were extremely terrifying. The highest level of demonic beasts known to date had already reached the astonishing Heaven Scryer realm. Not only were they high-level demonic beasts, there were also a large number of them. In addition, there were many battles in the north, so there was a strong frontier army stationed there all year round. From the 100-beast cliff to the primordial swamp, Xiang Nan didn't dare to waste too much time on the journey. He left in a hurry without even resting. In the early spring, the inland coastal area was still warm, but the weather in the north was still cold. The further north one went, the colder it became. After Xiang Nan flew 30,000 li north, the air seemed to have suddenly changed its style. It suddenly turned cold, and an unbelievable boundary appeared between heaven and earth. Outside the boundary line was barren land, and inside was boundless snowy plains. A martial artist's physical fitness was tyrannical and his ability to defend against the cold was extremely strong. However, using Yuan Qi to defend against the cold day and night was not a long-term strategy. Xiang Nan found a city and bought a warm mink fur cloak. Xiang Nan felt much more comfortable with his furry outer collar sticking to his neck. He bought another furry collar and pulled it off. He also circled the little bird's neck a few times before continuing on his way. On the fourth day, 10,000 kilometers away from the primordial swamp, looking down from a high place, a magnificent city suddenly stood between heaven and earth. Most of the buildings in those cities were actually made of giant ice. Looking over in the vast snowy plains, he was rather shocked. I didn't expect to see such a bustling scene in such a marginal area. Xiang Nan couldn't help but sigh. There were people coming and going in every large city. It was not lively. Some people were peddling their beast hides in the streets with their bare arms. Others were opening steaming hot drawer after drawer. The hot buns and steamed buns that had just come out were all snatched away. Xiang Nan continued to fly. After another 10,000 li, he finally arrived at his destination, the Northern Border Defense Forces base. Actually, this camp was also a huge city with a vast area and a prosperous scene. However, what they saw here were the solemn and dignified soldiers. Before Xiang Nan could get within 10 miles of the city, he was stopped by a group of flying cavalry. In the sky, there were hundreds of such flying cavalry patrols, one for every 5 people. They were riding on military twin-headed tiger lions. This type of demonic beast was generally at the 5th level of the Xiantian realm to the 5th level of the Guiyuan realm, and the difference in strength was still enormous. Strangely, the 2-headed tiger lion had a pair of huge feathered wings and 2 heads. One was a lion's head, while the other was a tiger's head. It looked rather strange. "Who is it?" The patrol stopped Xiang Nan in the sky. "I am a disciple of the Haoran sect. I am here to carry out a mission." As for the military, there was no need for Xiang Nan to conceal his identity. He immediately took out the mission scroll. The captain of the patrol team took the scroll with a suspicious expression and muttered, "The geniuses of the Haoran sect are like crucian carps. There are people your age who have only reached the 1st level of the origin reversion realm. Come, there are some things we need to question." Xiang Nan followed the patrol and landed on the 300-meter-tall giant city wall. This place would be attacked by demonic beasts all year round, so the city walls were extremely solid. The general height of the city walls was 250 meters, and the thickness of the walls reached an astonishing 20 meters. It was impossible for ordinary demonic beasts to charge in with such an iron wall. There were sentry posts on the city walls, and almost every 50 steps there were towers and arrow towers. At this moment, the countless soldiers on the city wall had extremely serious expressions. There was even a trace of undetectable fear in their eyes. Xiang Nan accurately captured these details, but he didn't ask any further. "You're Xiang Nan." The patrol captain found a city guard officer. The city guard officer looked at the scroll and looked at Xiang Nan from time to time. "It's me, Sun Peak disciple of the Haoran sect, Xiang Nan." Xiang Nan straightened his body and replied neither humbly nor arrogantly. "Sun Peak. Are you the disciple of Su Kaiyu, Lord Su?" The city guard was shocked. "You know my master," Xiang Nanchi said. "And hand over his token." The city guard laughed and said, "I don't have that kind of good fortune. It's just that Peak Lord Su is famous. How many of us in the military have never heard of him?" After checking his waist token and confirming that Xiang Nan's identity was correct, he decided to let him go. At this moment, the sound of a horn suddenly came from the sky. Woo-woo! Woo-woo! The sound of the horn spread far and wide in the ice and snow. It sounded a little sad and touching. "Hurry up and defend. It's a heavenly devil cult member." Someone from the sentry tower shouted loudly. "Formation! Formation!" The city guard couldn't care less about greeting Xiang Nan. He took 3 steps and ran to the side, shouting loudly as he ran. Looking at the city wall, in just a breath's time, 10 rows of trained soldiers had already gathered. The first 3 rows of soldiers were archers, the middle 3 rows were shield soldiers, and the last 4 rows were throwers. Heavenly devil religion, Xiang Nan's heart sank and he quickly looked into the distance. He saw a vast expanse of white shadows suddenly appear in the place where the snowy plains were connected to the sky. At a glance, there were tens of thousands of those shadows. Chapter 184 Heavenly Devil Religion. At first, Xiang Nan could only see a blurry white shadow. When those shadows approached, he discovered that those shadows were all densely packed heavenly demon cult members. These heavenly demon cult disciples wore white robes and pointed white hats. They were very symbolic. At this time, a large group of dark flying cavalry flew over from within Border City. The more he looked, the more they numbered 4,000 to 5,000. At the very front, a general riding a large two-headed lion tiger raised his right hand and shouted, "Thrower." The first 6 rows of soldiers on the city wall immediately ran horizontally to the left and right, making way for 2 people to pass through. After that, the 4 rows of throwers bowed, ran up, and abruptly tossed out the spears in their hands. The spears were all condensed with the weather and were extremely sharp. Thousands of spears covered the sky and rained down like a storm, immediately nailing the first few rows of heavenly devil cult disciples to the ground. However, the heavenly demon sect members seemed to have no idea what death was. They did not show any pity for their companion's death. Instead, they suddenly sped up and rushed towards this place. 3 rows. The general in the sky shouted loudly. The throwers quickly retreated. The first 3 rows of archers raised their bows and arrows high up in the air. The arrows pierced through the sky at high speed, making a whoosh sound. As the rain of arrows fell, 2 rows of shield soldiers rushed out from the heavenly demon sect. Each of them raised a 3-meter-tall giant steel shield, and each of them was stacked 1 layer at a time, a total of 3 layers tall. The arrows snapped off the giant shield one after another. Less than 10% of the arrows pierced through the gap in the giant shield, killing a portion of the heavenly demon sect members. Flying cavalry, go! The general directly led the 5,000 flying heavy cavalry and flew through the sky. The 2-headed lion tiger beasts used by these flying heavy cavalry were all above the origin realm. A cold wind sprayed out from the tiger's mouth, slowing down the movements of the heavenly demon sect. The lion spat out flames, igniting a sea of flames within the heavenly demon sect. However, the heavenly demon sect members didn't even scream. They ignored the flying cavalry in the sky and continued to run with their heads lowered. After they approached a certain distance, the few rows of heavenly devil cult members in front of them immediately jumped up wildly. These people stepped on the city wall, borrowing their strength to continue to jump up crazily, and the border guards immediately shot out a rain of arrows from above. The heavenly devil religions were dying in droves, but they still jumped again. As a result, a person suddenly jumped onto the city wall. Without saying a word, he ran up to hug a city defense army and exploded with a boom. This explosion was extremely powerful. Not only did the explosion kill the embraced city guards, it also affected a dozen or so city guards on both sides. 7 of them were killed on the spot, and 3 of them were left with broken limbs. Mad Devil self-detonation pill. Xiang Nan's pupils contracted and he immediately recognized it. These people were the notorious Holy Light Squad. They were a bunch of madmen from the heavenly devil religion that made people tremble with fear. Everyone knew that cultivating martial arts was very important. The more stable one's foundation was, the longer one could walk on the path of martial arts. However, the so-called Holy Light team was to nurture a group of children to become realm experts from an early age. In other words, they did not practice any martial arts techniques and only focused on improving their realms. Moreover, they would suffer unimaginable pain, and use pain to stimulate their cultivation base to rise even further. The advantage of this was that their cultivation base would rise incomparably quickly. But the downside was that the subsequent upgrades of these Holy Light squads would be ruined. To put it bluntly, they wouldn't be able to go far. Some of them would stay in the Xiantian realm for the rest of their lives, while the better ones would stay in the origin realm. Therefore, normally, a martial artist in the Holy Light Squad that had reached the 9th level of the Xiantian realm would not even be able to defeat an ordinary martial artist at the 5th or 6th level of the Xiantian realm. However, the Heavenly Devil cult wanted the Holy Light Squad's realm. They needed to devour the terrifying Mad Devil's self-detonating pill and use the method of self-detonating their Dantian to perish with the enemy. Therefore, cultivating the Holy Light Squad was fast, effective, and extremely lethal. Heavy cavalry, go! The general in the sky shouted with his Yuan Qi, "Don't let them near the city wall." Below, the city gate rumbled open, and 1,000 steel masters surged out of the city wall like a flood. The heavy armored cavalry each held a 4-meter-long charge spear. The snow-bladed leopard mount beneath their legs was 5 meters long and 2 meters tall. They were all wearing a layer of solid armor. This heavy cavalry squad was like a sharp sword, instantly cutting into the crowd of Heavenly Devil cult members. The long charge spear charged left and right through the crowd, killing the Heavenly Devil cult members on the spot. As for those heavenly demons, they were not afraid at all. They actually self-destructed one after another in their own ranks. In an instant, nearly 1,000 Heavenly Devil cult members self-detonated at the same time. The sound wave surged into the sky, causing a terrifying mushroom cloud to explode. With this explosion, the Heavenly Demon sect had also killed and wounded nearly 5,000 people. As for the 1,000 heavy cavalry, they were completely annihilated. No one was able to escape alive. Resist! The general in the sky shouted, "Heavy cavalry, go!" Another 1,000 heavy cavalry rushed out of the gate. The faces of these heavy cavalry were hidden in thick helmets. Their expressions were solemn and resolute, carrying an imposing aura of looking at death as if they were returning home. "Archer, throwers, hurry!" The rain of arrows and spears fell one after another. Behind him, dragon cannons with peculiar shapes were pushed forward. Each dragon cannon was under the control of 3 Xiantian 9th layer soldiers. The 3 of them pressed their palms against the back of the dragon cannon. Their Xiantian was instantly sucked away and entered the dragon cannon. Immediately after, the huge mouth of the dragon cannon exploded with a boom, and a 10-meter diameter protocosmic cannonball was fired. Cannonballs blossomed in the crowd of Heavenly Demon cult members, causing limbs and broken arms to fly everywhere in the sky. However, the ferocious Heavenly Demon sect members didn't even have the slightest intention of retreating. They were like the waves that constantly rushed towards the city walls. Another Heavenly Devil cultivator jumped up. Before the Heavenly Devil cultivator's right foot could reach the edge of the city wall, he was killed by a spear shot by the city defense army. However, the Heavenly Devil cultivator remained expressionless and self-destructed. With a loud explosion, 7 or 8 city guards were knocked over. "Look, it's the Heavenly Demon cult's flying cavalry." A city guard pointed at the sky and roared angrily. "Follow me." The general in the sky shouted loudly as he led the 5,000 flying cavalry and charged towards the other party. The Heavenly Demon cult's flying cavalry were riding very cheap flying mounts. They had little combat strength, and their flying speed was very slow. They could easily be shot down. However, they didn't care about this at all. They just blindly dodged the attacks of the city defense cavalry and the primordial weather. As soon as a Heavenly Demon cavalry approached, it would self-destruct on the spot. The air waves blew away the city defense flying cavalry, and then even more Heavenly Demon flying cavalry took the opportunity to pierce through and continuously launch death attacks. Chapter 185 Tragic Victory. Without saying a word, Xiang Nan pulled out his huge saber and joined the battle. He flapped his Yuan Qi wings and flew in the air above the city wall. As long as a heavenly devil cult member tried to jump up, he would be slashed at the waist by Xiang Nan with a saber light. His saber light hacked accurately, directly hacking into the heavenly devil religion's dantian, causing it to be completely destroyed before the explosion, preventing it from self-detonating. As for those heavenly devil sect disciples, it was as if they were endless. No matter how they killed them, they would not be able to finish them off. After killing one, there was still another. After killing a batch of them, more crowds filled the crowd. The dragon cannons on the city walls had already entered a gap period. Every 3 soldiers in charge of the dragon cannons were quickly depleted in the weather before their substitutes rushed up to take over. The flying generals in the sky were incomparably valiant. The Guiyuan 5th level twin-headed lion tiger beast beneath its legs was like a sharp bolt of lightning, refracting back and forth among the enemy troops. Every time it refracted, nearly 10 heavenly demon flying cavalry were slashed down. In the snowy plains below, 1,000 heavily armored cavalry scattered the heavenly demon cult's holy light squadron, but those holy light squadrons continued to explode. In less than 5 minutes, the 1,000 heavily armored cavalry were completely annihilated. This was simply a war meat grinder. The death of life was like the autumn harvest of cut wheat. Xiang Nan's heart was heavy. He had already killed the red-eyed man. He tilted his Yuan Qi by 1/3 and sent a lightning tremble towards the heavenly devil religion that had already been eliminated by him. A huge fan-shaped Yuan Qi sliced through, and 300 to 400 heavenly devil cult members were blasted to pieces. "You! Come up!" The commander in the sky noticed Xiang Nan's ferocity and let out a loud roar. Xiang Nan flapped his Yuan Qi feathered wings and flew into the air. Blood had already appeared on the general's forehead. He was an 8th level heavenly Yuan expert. "Follow me and kill the heavenly devil cult's commander." The general grabbed Xiang Nan's arm and flew towards the rear of the heavenly demon sect. Below, sharp arrows rushed into the sky, all of them nimbly dodged by the general. "I'm in charge of creating chaos, and you're in charge of intercepting and killing the heavenly devil sect's generals. They're all wearing the same clothes, so it's hard to identify them. You only need to find those people who were escorted away by many heavenly demons. Don't think too much, just kill them." "Understood." Xiang Nan nodded. The twin-headed lion-tiger beast spread its wings and quickly arrived at the back of the heavenly demon sect. There were a large number of white carriages and horses there. Seeing the right time, prepare to attack. The general greeted him and randomly clasped his body together. The powerful Yuan Qi completely covered his body. Then, the general rolled into a ball of Yuan Qi and exploded into the carriage. There were thousands of carriages and horses in this group, and they didn't know which of them was in charge. With his strength at the 8th level of the heavenly Yuan realm, the general directly collided with the heavenly devil religious chariots and horses, bouncing up and down again and again. Countless heavenly devil cult members were sent flying and their bodies were crushed. So strong. Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and nodded forcefully. Golden Gothic Iron Horse. Looking again, after that general's origin energy ball landed on the ground and exploded again, it was a charge on the spot. The Golden Gorge Iron Horse was one of the strongest martial skills of the military. A group of radiant horses suddenly appeared beneath the commander's crotch. They charged forward with the commander, followed by a fan-shaped essence cavalry. The cavalry were all phantoms formed from Yuan Qi. They followed the generals and charged forward, immediately blasting a large number of chariots and horses to pieces. Heavenly slash. After the general charged forward, he rose up from the ground. He raised his hands high, and the large number of Yuan Qi cavalry below him turned into Yuan Qi again, condensing into the general's hand and turning into a heaven-piercing blade of light. The light blade was 100 meters tall, slashing down from the sky and towards the earth. In an instant, more than 1,000 heavenly devil cult members died miserably under the saber. When the general's second heaven-splitting slash was about to land, an expert finally rushed out of the heavenly demon sect. That expert probably had the strength of a late Tian Yuan expert. He wore a white robe and raised his right hand high. A 10-meter-long shield of light was lifted horizontally into the sky by him. The general's heaven-splitting slash landed on the 10-meter light shield. This unprecedented collision immediately produced a circular shock wave. Boom! Countless devils were blown away by the strong winds and waves. Xiang Nan was shocked by the battle between the experts of the heaven origin realm, but he did not relax his vigilance. He suddenly saw 5 carriages rapidly retreating from the rear of the carriage team, for surrounded by one. That's it. Xiang Nan flapped his wings and chased after him. When he landed, an azure dragon went out to sea. All 5 carriages were knocked over. A white-haired old man emerged from the carriage in the middle. This old man should be the leader of the war, but his realm wasn't too high. He only looked like a Xiantian 5th layer. However, before Xiang Nan could make a move, the old man raised his right hand and said, "May the heavens descend upon the holy light and protect our holy sect." With that, the old man's body exploded. Xiang Nan was stunned. He had never seen such a madman who didn't want to die. Once the old man died, the battle finally ended. The few remaining heavenly devil cult members didn't even run for their lives and self-destructed on the spot. Xiang Nan desperately flapped his wings and flew upwards, condensing his Yuan Qi shield to protect his body. However, he was still blasted by the large-scale self-detonation, causing him to feel dizzy and his ears to buzz. Within a short minute, no one in the heavenly devil cult had survived. None of them escaped, and none of them survived. Looking at the scene of blood flowing into the river, Xiang Nan felt his scalp go numb. These people are all madmen. Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and his eyes turned red. In this battle, both sides suffered heavy casualties, and the city defense army immediately began to finish their work. Xiang Nan was called over by the general and received in a tent. "My name is Luo Fei. I am a junior general of the Beijiang City Defense Corps." The general introduced. Military officers were divided into junior, intermediate, senior, general, general, and commander-in-chief. Xiang Nan, the 23rd generation disciple of the Haran sect. Xiang Nan said, "Oh." Luo Fei wiped the blood on his forehead and said, "So you should know Luo Yuan. I am his second brother." "Are you Luo Yuan's brother?" Xiang Nan truly did not expect that the Luo clan was one of the 5 great clans of the East China Sea. A disciple of such a distinguished clan would actually come to the front to throw his head and spill his blood. During the conversation, Xiang Nan already had some admiration for Luo Fei. "General Luo Fei, do you want me to stay and help?" Xiang Nan had seen the cruelty of this short battle and wanted to help. Luo Fei shook his head, "No need. War is the responsibility of our soldiers, and your sect disciples also have their own missions." Luo Fei sat with his golden saber and tossed a token to Xiang Nan, "Go, with this token in hand, you can enter and exit any area of border defense city at will." "Thank you, General." Xiang Nan clasped his fists and turned to leave the tent. At this moment, Luo Fei's words came from the tent and he said, "Xiang Nan, I want to make a request that I shouldn't make. If necessary, please take care of my younger brother. Don't worry, I will do my best." Xiang Nan nodded heavily. Chapter 186 Little Girl. Xiang Nan fiercely imprinted Luo Fei's request in his heart. Luo Fei, a soldier who fears death for the sake of his country and for the sake of the people, is worthy of respect. If they fight on the front lines, their families will naturally receive the protection they deserve. He didn't dare to say anything else. At least in the Haran sect, Xiang Nan could still take care of Luo Yuan, although he didn't know if Luo Yuan was willing to be taken care of. However, at this moment, Xiang Nan had a deeper understanding of the Luo clan. The border defense city was incomparably huge, even larger than Haotian City. Not only were there a large number of soldiers stationed inside, there were also many civilians who were willing to live here. Xiang Nan followed the mission scroll and went to look for the people from the cavalry sect. He was also thinking in his heart, why did the heavenly devil cult's people come to attack Border City for no reason? What good would this do to the heavenly devil cult? They shouldn't be stuffed to the brim, intentionally going against the Haotian army, right? One had to know that their followers had died far more than the border guards. Later, Xiang Nan found a cavalry disciple in a simple but crude inn. There were only a dozen or so of these disciples, and their cultivation was only at the 9th level of the Xiantian realm. When Xiang Nan revealed his intentions, those disciples immediately became excited. "Are you really a senior brother of the Haran sect?" An Iron Cavalry sect disciple excitedly grabbed Xiang Nan's hand and said, "I didn't expect that the Nature sect would really accept our request." "Don't get excited. Tell me the cause and effect of this," Xiang Nan said straightforwardly. Only then did the disciple reveal his original identity. The reason why the cavalry sect had come to the northern region to carry out this mission was not because they were courting death, but because the cavalry sect location was within the northern region. The reason why they had gone to the distant Wulong province to recruit disciples back then. The reason for that was because a large number of 2nd and 3rd grade sects had already split up the interior. As a 3rd grade sect, the Iron Cavalry sect could only go to the border to recruit disciples. This time, there were 25 disciples. They went to the primordial swamp to train, but somehow, they were separated halfway. Up until today, the other 11 disciples hadn't returned. The primordial swamp was very large, so it would be relatively safe if they didn't explore further. "Have you tried signaling?" Xiang Nan asked. The disciple said, "Yes, I did." The messenger flew directly into the primordial swamp, but he never flew out. Xiang Nan frowned and pondered. Since the messenger could still fly in, it meant that the 11 disciples should be alive. Otherwise, the messenger would not have acted. But why didn't there be an echo? "Where was the last time you were separated?" Xiang Nan asked. The disciple hurriedly took out the map and pointed at it. "It's right here. We got lost the moment we entered. After we dispersed, our team walked for more than 20 days before coming out. It's not clear where the other missing Marshall brothers are. I only know where they got separated." Xiang Nan nodded and said, "Wait here. Nobody leaves without my orders." With that, Xiang Nan took the map and set off immediately. The primordial swamp was located thousands of kilometers southeast of Border City, and its area was more than 10 times larger than the Black Sharp Demon Forest. As for the places where cavalry disciples were scattered, they were indeed in the most marginal areas. It was very safe there, and there were even many towns and cities built by warriors, hunters, and herb gatherers. As soon as Xiang Nan arrived at the edge of the primordial swamp, He saw the dense demonic aura in the sky that had not dispersed for a long time. "Little sparrow, don't fly around here. It's very dangerous." Xiang Nan greeted him and entered the swamp. The primordial swamp had been developed into a large area by the martial artists, with a total of 5 entrances. Xiang Nan was the entrance to the far left, but not far away, he suddenly found a person lying in the snow. When he approached, he saw a little girl around 7 or 8 years old. Most of the little girl's body was already covered in snow. Her face was pale and her lips were frozen purple. Xiang Nan probed her and found that she was still breathing. He hurriedly hugged her in his arms and placed his left hand on her chest, injecting a steady stream of vast heaven pure elemental technique into her chest. In about an incense stick of time, the little girl's face finally turned red. Xiang Nan heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Why did such a young child come here? Fortunately, he met me. Otherwise, he would have died here." Xiang Nan did not know where her home was. Since she had appeared here, she should be from a certain town on the edge of the primordial swamp. However, not long after she left, the little girl's face turned cold again, and her entire body became frighteningly cold. "What's going on?" Xiang Nan frowned and once again channeled pure elemental energy to the little girl. Just like that, Xiang Nan stopped for more than 10 times to channel pure elemental energy to her. Every time it seemed like he would be rescued, her entire body would freeze again in less than a meal's time. Xiang Nan felt that it was very strange. This little girl's symptoms looked quite similar to little Yuer's, but after careful examination, they were completely different. Little Yuer was born with a body chill, which was a disease. The little girl in her arms did not seem to be sick. Her ENG chill came from her meridians. Strange, Xiang Nan could not understand what was going on with this little girl. But at this moment, Xiang Nan's heart ached for her. Thinking about it, it should be her parents who discovered that she had an incurable disease. No matter what, she couldn't cure it, so they ruthlessly threw the child away. Right at this moment, the little girl's face turned red. She opened her eyes, a pair of pitch-black eyes that looked like a beautiful night sky. "Don't be afraid. With me here, I won't let you die." Xiang Nan patted the little girl's chest and said, "When we get to the front town, Big Brother will find you some medicine to cook and eat. It will be fine." When the little girl saw Xiang Nan's face, a strange look appeared in her eyes. However, the look in her eyes quickly disappeared. A nameless town appeared in front of them. It was built by the herb gatherers and demonic beast hunters. This place was more than 500 miles away from where the cavalry sect disciples had been separated. Xiang Nan did not know much about medicine, so he asked an alchemist in the town. The pharmacist wiped away the little girl's pulse for a long time, but he didn't say why. He only frowned repeatedly. "Can't you tell?" Xiang Nan asked. The alchemist said, "Although I am only an alchemist, I am still skilled in medicine. However, this child doesn't seem to be ill." Sure enough, Xiang Nan's heart sank, just like his own judgment. "How about this? I have a few high-quality 1,000-year-old spirit ginseng here. Buy some decoction for this child to drink and see if it will help." Spirit ginseng is a kind of ginseng, just like the difference between spirit herbs and herbs. Spirit ginseng contains rich but gentle medicinal properties, and the 1,000-year-old spirit ginseng has excellent nourishing effects on the human body. Of course, its value is also very expensive. This item already belonged to the 3rd-grade spirit grass. Xiang Nan spent a total of 100,000 gold coins to buy 2 of them. Originally, he intended to leave immediately, but seeing that the girl's health was getting worse and worse, he prepared to stop for a night. After renting a random thatched cottage, Xiang Nan squatted on the pot table and cooked the spirit ginseng soup before feeding it to the little girl bit by bit. Chapter 187. A Vanished Person. After drinking the ginseng soup, the little girl's complexion really improved a little. Previously, she had to freeze every time she ate, but now, it had been delayed to 2 meals. Sure enough, it's still effective. Xiang Nan wiped his sweat and relaxed a little. "What's your name and where did you come from?" Xiang Nan sat beside the bed and asked gently. The little girl only stared at Xiang Nan without saying a word. "Your health is bad. Wait 2 hours, I'll feed you again." Xiang Nan patted the little girl's chest and said, "Sleep, brother, watch over you." This night was very long for Xiang Nan. Every 2 meals, he would send pure elemental energy to the little girl to maintain her life. The girl's body was as frightening as a bottomless pit. No matter how much yuan qi Xiang Nan sent in, there was no sign of her body swelling. Xiang Nan fed her ginseng soup twice a night. She took it again before getting up in the morning to prepare to leave. Xiang Nan hugged her and sighed, "I don't know where to put you. Why don't you follow me first? When we get out, I'll find a famous doctor for you to take a look." After saying that, Xiang Nan spread out his essence feather wings and flew at a low altitude. Without attracting the attention of the demonic beasts, he tried his best to speed up. Fortunately, this place was relatively remote and there were very few demonic beasts. Even if there were, they were all body-tempering realm goods. But before he could fly very far, the little girl fell ill again. Xiang Nan could only stop and continue to send her yuan qi. This time, after the little girl recovered, she finally spoke for the first time, "I want to be convenient. Right here." Xiang Nan said. The little girl stared at Xiang Nan and said, "No." Xiang Nan helplessly scratched the little girl's nose, "It's not big, there's a lot of trouble. Go, I'll wait for you again, don't go far, the weather is cold." Xiang Nan wrapped the little girl in a thick cotton coat before letting her go. The little girl circled around a few trees before disappearing from Xiang Nan's sight. At this moment, a strange light suddenly flashed in the girl's eyes. Her body turned into an afterimage and instantly disappeared. She appeared again. She was already standing in the town that she had just left in the morning. The herb gatherers and demonic beast hunters in the town had already come out. They were peeling off the fur of the demonic beasts, while the herb gatherers were screening for spiritual herbs. Looking at the little girl again, her entire body was suddenly shrouded in a purple-black mist. Immediately after, she raised her hands high and opened her mouth. At this moment, the entire town was stuck in a stalemate, and everyone opened their mouths one after another, sucking out beams of spiritual light from their mouths. The spiritual lights gathered in the sky and were swallowed by the girl. The entire town turned into dried corpses and fell to the ground one by one. With a pu sound, they fell to the ground and turned into a handful of powder. Just like that, the people in the entire town completely disappeared. On the other side, Xiang Nan lowered his head and looked at the map. He was thinking about something. He took out a message and released it. He saw the messenger suddenly turn north in the sky and disappear into a streak of light. Looks like those 11 disciples are still in the north. Xiang Nan frowned. In his hand, there were only the last 2 messengers that could contact the missing disciples. Originally, there were 11 of them, 8 of which were used by other disciples, leaving only 3 for Xiang Nan. Huh. She's back. Xiang Nan couldn't help but reveal a bright smile when he saw the girl walking towards him from behind the tree, 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow. "Is it cold?" Xiang Nan wrapped her collar and asked with concern. The little girl stared into Xiang Nan's eyes and shook her head. Only then did Xiang Nan carefully examine her appearance. This child had pink makeup and jade, like an exquisite little doll. The exquisite degree of her facial features was somewhat superior to that of a human. At this moment, Xiang Nan suddenly frowned and thought to himself, "Why does it seem like I've seen her somewhere? Her face seems to be somewhat familiar." However, no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out why. He just felt strange in his heart. "Let's hurry up and hurry up." Xiang Nan picked her up horizontally and flew close to her. The little girl was lying in Xiang Nan's embrace, her eyes rolling, occasionally reaching out to touch Xiang Nan's chin. Xiang Nan lowered her head and smiled gently at her, "Don't be afraid. With Big Brother here, I won't let anything happen to you." Halfway through, Xiang Nan gave her the last 1,000-year-old spirit ginseng and drank it. The 500-li journey passed in a blink of an eye. When they arrived at the place where the cavalry sect disciples had disappeared, they discovered that there wasn't any residual spiritual energy fluctuations here. Once a martial artist's Yuan Qi was released, it would leave a trace of fluctuation in the sky. This trace would disappear with the passage of time, and ordinary martial artists would not be able to see it with the naked eye. Xiang Nan scanned the area with his lightning-like eyes. There was no residue in the air, so he knew that the messenger definitely did not land near here. Still in the north. Xiang Nan flew up into the sky to take a look. Then, he headed north and entered the dangerous region of the primordial swamp. Looking out from this place, there were small black dots shaking at the junction of heaven and earth. Those should all be flying demonic beasts, so you have to be more careful when you fly next. "Are you afraid?" Xiang Nan asked the little girl. The girl shook her head. "How brave." Xiang Nan rubbed the girl's hair and said, "Big Brother will take you on an adventure." As he went deeper and deeper, the level of demonic beasts he encountered began to increase. At the beginning, it was only body-tempering demonic beasts. They slowly arrived at the Xiantian demonic beast region. Further deeper, they would reach the Xiantian 5th layer or higher. By the time the sky darkened, Xiang Nan had already entered the Xiantian 9th level demonic beast zone. It would only take him 100 miles to reach the origin realm demonic beast zone. Xiang Nan released the second message, but he watched helplessly as the message turned into a streak of light and disappeared into the limits of what the northernite could reach. What exactly are these cavalry disciples doing? They actually ran so deep into the ground. Xiang Nan couldn't help but frown. He felt that this matter was very strange. Could it be that they were captured by demonic beasts? However, it was unlikely that demonic beasts would attack humans on the spot. Could it be that it was the same as the monster he encountered in the Qingshui forest last time? It's not quite right. That monster is close to the place where humans live, so it's very convenient to steal humans away. However, the disappearance of the cavalry sect disciples in such a deep area was obviously completely different from the style of the Qingshui forest. At this moment, Xiang Nan saw some flames at the corner of his eyes. That should be the last town in this region. Xiang Nan nodded and flew over with the girl in his arms. The hunters and herb gatherers in this nameless town were generally at a very high level. Most of them were at the 8th to 9th level of the Xiantian realm. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to settle in such a damned place. Xiang Nan was ruthless, spending 200,000 gold coins to buy two 2,000-year-old spirit ginseng stalks. He stayed by the bed and didn't even dare to sleep, afraid that the girl would be dead by the time he woke up. But for some reason, his eyelids were extremely heavy, and he unknowingly closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he was also shocked. He wished he could slap himself. Why did he fall asleep? However, seeing the little girl blinking her big eyes and staring at him, he relaxed and said, "Is it cold?" The girl shook her head. "Yes, it's time to set off." Xiang Nan carried her out of the house. Looking around, he could not even see a ghost in such a large town. Huh? Where are the people? Why are they all gone? Xiang Nan was stunned. Chapter 188. A sneak attack from the snow. Where are they? Xiang Nan's expression was grave. Even if they went out to pick herbs and hunt demonic beasts, they wouldn't have all left at once, right? In such a large town, not even a single person was left behind. This place is a bit strange. It's better for us to leave as soon as possible. Xiang Nan picked up the little girl and quickly left. After traveling northward again, they had already begun to enter a dangerous area. The demonic energy in the air was getting denser and denser, and the corresponding amount of spiritual energy was getting smaller and smaller. Such a thin amount of spiritual energy was very disadvantageous to a human martial artist. Xiang Nan Xia subconsciously touched his storage ring. Fortunately, during the battle in Baisho City, he had taken 15 intermediate-grade spirit stones. Apart from the ones he had used, he still had 3 on him, which was enough for him to replenish his yuan qi to perfection 3 times. As he walked forward, there were more flying demonic beasts circling in the sky. Occasionally, he would see a huge black shadow flashing past the sky. At this moment, Xiang Nan held the girl in his arms and lowered his body. It was not wise to provoke a demonic beast. A demonic beast was not scary. What was scary was that one didn't know which demonic beasts had the ability to summon their companions. When the time came, killing one of them would cause a chain reaction and it would be terrible. The demonic beasts here have already reached the first level of origin return. Xiang Nan took a deep breath and tried his best to suppress his yuan qi fluctuations to a minimum, even slowing down his heartbeat. What is this? Just as Xiang Nan was lowering his body and crossing through the dense bushes, he suddenly saw a pile of stones under a tree. The stones were arranged in a tower, like artificial markings. Could it be that the cavalry sect disciples left behind a signal for help? Xiang Nan didn't know much about the situation of the cavalry gate, so he couldn't judge for a moment. However, after the little girl saw the stone, her eyes moved slightly, as if she had thought of something. At this moment, a faint sound of air breaking suddenly appeared. The air-piercing sound was extremely difficult to detect. It was simply like a leaf trembling slightly. The little girl gently pulled Xiang Nan with her hand. Almost at the same time, Xiang Nan could feel the sound of air breaking. His body quickly moved horizontally, and he felt an icy chill as he slid over his shoulder. It was a small streak of light, which, after brushing past Xiang Nan's shoulder and leaving a tear in his sleeve, immediately pierced through the tree trunk in front of him, and it was still silent. Xiang Nan was drenched in cold sweat. He suddenly turned around, but there was nothing behind him, not even the slightest abnormal fluctuation. Someone. Let's go. Xiang Nan's heart became heavy. He quickened his pace, lowered his body at an extremely fast speed, and circled back and forth between the trees to avoid the enemy's sneak attack in such an arc. Suddenly, another inaudible sound of air-piercing rang out. Xiang Nan still only noticed this sound the moment it was about to hit him. He dodged it dangerously. However, the hidden weapon this time still cut through the mink flannel cloth on Xiang Nan's back. How could this be? Xiang Nan leaned against a tree and began to breathe quickly. He found that he couldn't sense the existence of a hidden weapon in advance. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. He had been attacked by a hidden weapon twice before and after, and it could be said that he was almost hit by it. The speed of the concealed weapon was extremely fast. As long as someone activated the concealed weapon would definitely leave a strong tearing sound in the air. This was one of the main ways a martial artist could judge the arrival of the concealed weapon. However, when Xiang Nan was ambushed twice, the hidden weapon was like a ghost in the air, quietly approaching, making it difficult for him to detect it. If he couldn't sense the sound of air piercing, Xiang Nan would be like a blind person who couldn't see with both eyes. This gave him an unprecedented sense of crisis. Early in the morning, the sun shone brightly, illuminating the snow. His vision was very wide, but Xiang Nan felt as if he was walking in a fog. He hugged the girl and stopped for a moment before continuing forward slowly. However, in a trance, he seemed to see a vague figure standing in the bushes right in front of him, as if he was looking at him. However, when Xiang Nan focused on it, the figure disappeared for no apparent reason. Could it be an illusion? Xiang Nan frowned. He always felt that after coming to this area, everything revealed a strange energy. He touched his storage ring. There was still a final message inside. Whether he wanted to use it here or not, he needed to carefully consider. At that moment, a great sense of death suddenly enveloped Xiang Nan. This kind of crisis caused Xiang Nan to immediately dodge. Pooh! He felt that he had dodged in time, but his left shoulder still felt a sharp pain. He hastily pulled out the hidden weapon from his left shoulder. He looked over and saw that he was holding a small short blade in his hand. This kind of short blade was like a shrunk dagger. It was only 2 fingers wide, and its index finger was long, but it didn't have a handle. It actually pierced through. Xiang Nan looked at the blood stains on the short blade and his heart sank. The short blade had actually pierced into his black spotted armor. It was hard to imagine that if he didn't wear the black spotted armor, the power of the short blade would definitely be able to pierce through his body. Not only was the enemy's sneak attack hard to detect, it was also so powerful. Xiang Nan hurriedly leaned against a tree trunk. The purpose was not to let the tree trunk help him block the attack, but to act as the first barrier. When the enemy's sneak attack came again, he would first pierce through the tree trunk and make a sound, so that he could gain time to dodge. However, when Xiang Nan leaned against the tree trunk and was about to poke his head to the left, he discovered that a small streak of light was about to press against the tip of his nose. In that instant, Xiang Nan's pupils contracted. He instinctively raised his right hand and used his 2 fingers to condense his yuan qi to grab the light that was about to pierce through his nose. It was still a small short blade that Xiang Nan had picked up with his finger. However, the huge impact from the short blade had actually pushed Xiang Nan's entire body back to the right, sliding nearly 10 meters. This Xiang Nan took a deep breath and felt his scalp numb. The short blade in his hand had just turned. Just as it was about to hit the tree, it suddenly drew an arc, dodging the tree trunk and approaching Xiang Nan. Fortunately, Xiang Nan looked to the left. Otherwise, the short blade would have pierced through his ears and pierced through his entire head. Damn it! Xiang Nan was annoyed. He threw down the short blade and swiftly wiped his eyes with both of his hands. He immediately looked at the back of the short blade with his lightning-like eyes. In an instant, everything within his sight became clear. At the fork above a tree, there was a person squatting. The person was holding a short blade between his fingers and was shooting at him. Xiang Nan was shocked. He simply couldn't believe what he saw. The person squatting on the tree branch was actually a first-level origin reversion martial artist. Chapter 189: A Silent Battle. At this moment, the person on the tree seemed to have noticed that Xiang Nan had discovered him. The moment he threw out the short blade, his body turned into a shadow and disappeared. Xiang Nan pulled out a huge saber and used it to hack down, hitting the incoming short blade. Clang! With a fierce collision, Xiang Nan was knocked back 2 meters, while the short blade was sent flying. What kind of strength is this? Xiang Nan sucked in a breath of cold air. In the Nature Sect's first grade academy, even if he was one of the strongest, if he used all of his strength, even a third-level origin returning cultivator would die by his saber. But now, a first-level origin reversion martial artist had appeared in the forest. That martial artist was at the same realm as him, but was even more powerful than him. Could it be that the one who ambushed him was one of the other 7 first-class sects? At this moment, the sense of danger shrouded in death appeared again, and it was right behind him. The hairs on Xiang Nan's body were about to stand up, because he felt a weak breathing sound, slowly swallowing by his ears. Xiang Nan grabbed the knife and struck backwards. At the same time, the person standing behind him also grabbed the short blade and slashed towards Xiang Nan's neck. The giant saber and the short blade met in a narrow space. Both of them were bounced backwards. Xiang Nan took 3 steps back, while the man took 5 or 6 steps back. Judging from this, in terms of strength alone, that person was actually a bit weaker than Xiang Nan. However, Xiang Nan could not understand why he felt that he had fallen into a disadvantage when fighting against that person. That person obviously did not expect Xiang Nan's reaction to be so swift, and his martial arts foundation to be so solid. Interesting. The man licked his lips and disappeared with a circle around the tree trunk. Xiang Nan waved his hand and a strand of yuan qi shattered the tree trunk. However, there was nothing behind the tree trunk. It's not appropriate to stay here for long. Xiang Nan sprinted wildly, his yuan qi feathered wings stretched out as he ran, and he was about to fly quickly against the ground. However, less than 2 seconds after his yuan qi feathered wings condensed, the large wing had just flapped once when it was pierced through by a streak of light. The 2 yuan qi wings instantly dissipated. When Xiang Nan's body fell, he hurriedly rolled over and landed on the ground before he was able to stand firm. Looking at the surrounding trees, it was unknown when 3 people had already stood. Those 3 people were in front, behind the left, behind the right, wrapping Xiang Nan in a triangle. Judging from your techniques, all of you are experts. Xiang Nan clasped his fists and said, "I'm just passing by. If I offend a few people by doing something inappropriate, I'll apologize to them." The faces of the 3 people were very strange, and they were all around the age of 16 or 17. Xiang Nan knew that he had definitely not seen them before. Perhaps he had accidentally intruded into their territory, which was why he had aroused their hostility. After saying those words, the 3 of them remained silent, neither answering nor leaving. Xiang Nan frowned and said, "We have no grievances or grudges. There is no need for us to risk our lives. In this way, I will bypass this area and not disturb everyone's retreat." As a martial artist, Xiang Nan still had some morality. Since he had collided with someone else, he could just take a step back and accompany him for a while. He could just turn around and leave. Seeing that the 3 of them did not react, he turned around and ran towards the east, preparing to take a detour before heading north. After he ran for more than 100 meters, he looked back while running. The three people standing on the tree had disappeared. Xiang Nan heaved a sigh of relief, but before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly felt his head heavy and his feet light. A pair of hands pulled his right ankle, and then the pair of hands threw Xiang Nan out. "Kill him." When Xiang Nan was thrown away, a cold and deep voice sounded. Xiang Nan was grabbed by the ankle and thrown into the sky. His legs were on the top, and his head was hanging upside down. At the same time, a shadow suddenly attacked from behind Xiang Nan's back. The shadow held a short blade, but it condensed a meter-long yuan qi light. By the time Xiang Nan realized it, the light was about to stick to Xiang Nan's back. Just 1 foot of light was enough to cut Xiang Nan in the waist. Xiang Nan did not notice the person who pulled his right leg, and Xiang Nan did not notice how Xiang Nan had come to the person who was about to cut Xiang Nan's waist from behind. These people were really like ghosts that had appeared for more than half a day. Their actions were silent and without the slightest bit of wind. At this critical moment, Xiang Nan relied on his strong combat experience to forcefully thrust the giant saber down his back. The blade descended against his flesh and skin, just in time to block the light blade that was about to slash him at the waist. With a loud bang, the impact from the giant saber sent Xiang Nan flying upside down. "Eh!" The sneak attacker behind him cried out in surprise. Obviously, he did not expect that Xiang Nan would actually be able to dodge this attack. However, as Xiang Nan fell forward, another person silently rushed over from the front. The short blade in his hand slid 3 times in a row, and 3 silent blades of light slashed towards Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan turned his saber around in a sorry state, and just as the enemy was about to cut off his neck, he sent the short blade flying. Although this silent battle was not as spectacular and tragic as the Yuan Qi bombardment, killing intent was hidden everywhere in the silence, shocking and soul-stirring. Xiang Nan had never experienced such a strange battle before. Every time he judged that the enemy was attacking, he was 2 times slower. Fortunately, it was Xiang Nan. If it were any other first-grade academy disciples of the Haoran sect, they would probably have died countless times. Xiang Nan felt depressed. He was clearly no weaker than the 3 of them, but he was unable to determine their attack route. He was unable to fully unleash his own battle rhythm. "Damn it, are you done?" Xiang Nan was furious and shouted, "I don't even know you." "You." Before he could finish his words, a cold feeling came from the left. Xiang Nan forcefully twisted his body in midair. A short blade brushed past Xiang Nan's chin, cutting open a narrow saber edge on his neck. A trace of warm blood slowly flowed down. "If you want to kill me, don't blame my subordinates for being merciless." Xiang Nan shook his hand and threw out a full moon saber light. The person that the saber light was pointing at lightly pointed at the saber light with the tip of his toe and borrowed his strength to ascend. "What?" Xiang Nan was shocked. This was the first time he saw someone who could step on the blade light with his feet. The cold feeling behind him caused Xiang Nan to immediately bend forward. 2 short blades sliced against his back, and 2 strands of black hair were sliced off, dancing in the air. Xiang Nan quickly stood up and grabbed one person's ankle with his left hand, while his right hand held a knife to hack another person's back. The 2 of them kicked each other, their feet kicked together and separated at the same time, avoiding Xiang Nan's attack. Just as they were dodging Xiang Nan's attack, they were actually able to retaliate. 2 light blades sliced straight at Xiang Nan's cheek. Xiang Nan took a flash step around the light blade and grabbed a person's ankle on the spot. "Let's see where you run to this time." Just as Xiang Nan's saber was about to land, the man's body was as soft as a snake. His entire body was wrapped around Xiang Nan's left arm, and the short blade in his hand was about to cut Xiang Nan's neck. Chapter 190 Killing Intent. The assailant's move was simply unbelievably beautiful, not something a human could easily do. But this happened in the end when Xiang Nan's eyelids were lowered. As long as he saw the enemy's attack, he would have a way to deal with it. Just as the man was about to cut Xiang Nan's neck, Xiang Nan pointed his left hand backwards and stabbed the back of the man who was coiling around his left arm. The man was in pain and his body stiffened. Xiang Nan swung his saber with his right hand to cut the man's waist. At this moment, the other man's legs hooked onto the tree trunk and his body swung down. He grabbed the man on Xiang Nan's arm and pulled him up. Xiang Nan's saber missed, and at a glance, the three of them disappeared again. Xiang Nan wiped his eyes and used his lightning gaze to search. A shadow hiding behind a tree suddenly flashed in his field of vision, exceeding the range of his eyes. When Xiang Nan turned his head to search again, he saw a person pouncing towards him. Boom! Xiang Nan used the giant saber to meet the short blade. After a single bombardment, his right foot heavily kicked the man in the stomach. In the limit space, the man was able to grab Xiang Nan's right leg with both hands and twist it violently. Xiang Nan's entire body twisted and spun, soaring into the air. Another person on the left borrowed strength to attack, using a short blade to stab Xiang Nan's temple. Xiang Nan used the hilt of his saber to block the attack on the left. He raised his saber high and a thin beam of sunlight fell on the blade. Sun God Technique, Little Sun Tempering. The expressions of the three changed slightly. They noticed that Xiang Nan's strength had suddenly increased dramatically, but they retreated without any reluctance to fight. Xiang Nan wanted to chase after him, but he found that his target had been completely lost. This feeling of punching cotton made Xiang Nan so angry that he wanted to raise his head and roar angrily. He had never been toyed with like this. Thus, he subconsciously dissipated the quenching sun that he had used the 9 transformations of thunder to imitate, that was, the small quenching sun. The problem was that Xiang Nan could not track them down. You can't fight in such an open space. Xiang Nan had also discovered that the three of them had come and gone without a trace, and he would not be able to obtain any benefits from fighting in such a place. Taking advantage of the time the three of them left, he hurriedly ran over a snowy valley and arrived at a cave on the opposite side of the mountain. The cave was very deep, about 10 meters long, but its width was just right. It could only accommodate 7 or 8 people walking side by side. Xiang Nan put the little girl down and crossed his legs to guard the cave entrance. No matter how strange the movements of the 3 people were, if they wanted to attack him, they had to enter through the cave entrance. Whoosh! Whoosh! Xiang Nan sat down cross-legged. The giant saber stabbed into the ground, continuously gasping for breath. What's the situation? Why aren't there any rumors about the actions of those 3 people? We can't find them with just our eyes. Suddenly, the little girl behind him suddenly spoke. Huh? Xiang Nan turned around and saw that the little girl's body was trembling and was about to freeze. He hurriedly hugged her in his arms and treated her with the vast heaven pure essence technique. He asked, "How do you know this?" The little girl's face slowly regained its color after being treated with pure elemental energy. She said, "I was born in a large family of martial artists. The elders discussed martial artists all day long, so I learned a little from what I heard and witnessed. So it's like this." Xiang Nan nodded and asked, "What do you mean you can't track them with your eyes?" The girl said, "You are a disciple of the sect, and the cultivation methods and martial skills that the sect provides to our disciples are nothing more than body refinement, chi refinement, and realm improvement. All of the martial skills you have learned are for fighting, but all of the methods they have learned are for killing people. To be honest, your combat skills are already outstanding. Otherwise, you would never have survived until now. Xiang Nan was rather surprised. When the little girl spoke, she was not childish at all. She looked like an old martial arts expert. He couldn't help but laugh in his heart. He scratched the little girl's nose and said, "You know a lot." The little girl said, "Those three people just now are clearly young experts from the dark forces. If I'm not mistaken, they should belong to the killer group." "And, you said that, it seems like that's true." Xiang Nan nodded silently. The dark forces had all sorts of organizations, just like the sections. Some of them were good at using poison, some were good at assassinating, and some were good at creating chaos. The killer group was not a separate organization, but a group of killer organizations. The little girl said, "Judging from the skills of those three people just now, they are very similar to the young killers of the Flying Leaf organization. These people have received a lot of cruel training from birth. Every move they learn is aimed at killing people. They can approach you silently. Without your knowledge, they can take your life. They are the shadows of the night. Then how can I achieve their level of shadowlessness?" Xiang Nan frowned and pondered. "Impossible." The girl shook her head, because the martial skills you learned are completely different from theirs. Actually, your martial skills are not inferior to theirs. In some ways, they are even more powerful than theirs. You can't beat them because you can't find their tracks. That's right. Xiang Nan nodded. After a few battles, he had gained experience. The three of them were very strong, but their yuan qi and strength weren't as convenient as his own. The girl said, the cruel training they received allowed them to cultivate the ability to merge into the natural environment. Their attacks and actions can be kept quiet and can even shake your eyes. And, then what did you say just now, that you can't find them with your eyes alone? Even in his previous life, Xiang Nan had always stayed in the profound sky sect, and he did not have a thorough understanding of a special profession like assassin. The girl pressed her finger against Xiang Nan's heart and said, "Use your heart to sense their existence. Observing the shape and listening to the wind is only a relatively basic method. If you are unable to determine their location through the sound of the wind, then use your heart to perceive what they cannot avoid. That is, killing intent." Killing intent? Xiang Nan was shocked. All martial artists could sense the opponent's killing intent, but the key was how much they could sense. If the enemy suppressed their killing intent to the minimum, they would not be able to feel it. The girl said, "No matter how well trained the killers are, it is impossible to completely block their killing intent. At most, it will only reduce their killing intent to its limit. Close your eyes." Xiang Nan Xia consciously closed his eyes. Immediately after, a terrifying killing intent enveloped Xiang Nan. That feeling was simply indescribable, causing Xiang Nan to feel suffocated. Even his heartbeat suddenly stopped at this moment, and cold sweat broke out from his entire body. Xiang Nan suddenly opened his eyes, his body trembling violently. In that instant, it was as if he was going to die at any moment. However, in front of him was only the little girl sitting quietly, not performing any movements. "This is called killing intent," the girl said. Chapter 191 Lonely C1 Boat. "Who exactly are you?" Xiang Nan grasped the hilt of the saber and fell into a state of alert. It was impossible for a 6 or 7-year-old child to release such terrifying killing intent. You don't have to ask. The girl said indifferently, we don't know each other. You don't intend to kill me, and I didn't think it would be bad for you. That's enough. Although Xiang Nan felt that it was somewhat incomprehensible, after thinking about it carefully, the girl's words weren't unreasonable. What was her identity and what did it have to do with him? I'm very weak now. The girl coughed and said, if you want to leave this place alive, you'd better use the shortest amount of time to increase your perception of killing intent. Otherwise, you won't be a match for the three of them. Now, close your eyes. Xiang Nan obediently closed his eyes. In any case, he had already reached this point. He wasn't afraid that she would suddenly attack him. If she wanted to kill him, then when he was asleep in the town, she could have made a move. She didn't have to wait until now. The girl's voice sounded, I'm starting to release my killing intent now. You should slowly comprehend how much you can experience. It's your own good fortune. Before the girl could finish her sentence, a fierce killing intent once again enveloped Xiang Nan. Although Xiang Nan knew that she wouldn't harm him, that kind of killing intent was real. Xiang Nan couldn't help but feel the urge to pull out his saber and fight. Where am I? The girl asked. At this moment, the killing intent coming from the front suddenly changed and appeared behind Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan broke out in cold sweat. He was desperate to open his eyes to look at the girl. Only when he saw her still sitting upright could he feel relieved. However, he knew that he could not do this. He could only endure it. Behind. Xiang Nan said. Is that so? A voice came from the front. Xiang Nan was stunned for a moment, then killing intent came from all directions, occupying all directions. It was as if Xiang Nan was in the middle of a vast ocean, and that killing intent was the sea, omnipresent. Comprehending killing intent usually requires a martial artist to train day and night for several years, but you don't have the time. You may only have a few days or a few hours. If you want to live, don't think nonsense. Xiang Nan was awakened by the girl's roar, so he hurriedly straightened his mind and went to comprehend it seriously. As the girl released her killing intent, she said, killing intent has nothing to do with thought, it has nothing to do with emotions. No matter how stable a person's emotions are, even if he doesn't need to stare at you. But as long as he is prepared to kill you, his killing intent will inevitably leak out. Now, imagine me as a drop of fresh water in the ocean and find my location. A martial artist's perception of killing intent usually shifted from heavy to light, releasing dense killing intent first, and then gradually weakening the killing intent, thereby enhancing the martial artist's ability to trace the killing intent. But the girl was right. They didn't have that time, so the girl directly enveloped Xiang Nan with even more terrifying killing intent. If Xiang Nan could still find the girl's location in this kind of killing intent that filled the sky. In that case, it would be much easier to find a trace of killing intent fluctuation from the enemy without killing intent enveloping them. Of course, this kind of training was very fast, but it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Where am I? The girl's voice came. Xiang Nan closed his eyes and raised his finger, pointing to the left, but behind him, a hand landed on his shoulder. Wrong guess. Where am I? The voice appeared again. Xiang Nan immediately pointed in the direction of the voice, and the girl's hand rested on Xiang Nan's shoulder from another direction. I said before, don't rely on watching and listening, but rely on your heart to find it. Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and forced himself to calm down. However, that girl's killing intent was pervasive in all directions. How could he be able to accurately find her existence in such an environment? For 3 hours in a row, Xiang Nan found nothing. It could even be said that there was not even the slightest improvement. The girl sighed and said, "Open your eyes. It's impossible for you to succeed, though it's within my expectations." Xiang Nan opened his eyes and was very unwilling. "You don't have to blame yourself," the girl said. "It's only natural that you can't complete your training. No one can master this ability in such a short period of time." Hearing this, the girl had already given up training Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan, however, lowered his head and remained silent. He had a different state in his heart. "If I could sense Xian Qingzhu's killing intent in my previous life, I wouldn't have been successfully ambushed by her." At the thought of this, Xiang Nan's mind buzzed loudly, and then he calmed down unprecedentedly. "Do it again." Xiang Nan's state was completely different, and his tone was as calm as water. The girl looked deeply at Xiang Nan and said, "Close your eyes." Xiang Nan closed his eyes. At this moment, he felt like he was in the void, surrounded by darkness. There was no heaven, no earth, no cave, or even no self. When the girl's murderous intent enveloped him, Xiang Nan felt as if he had seen countless waves rushing towards him, wanting to swallow him up. "Where am I?" The girl's voice came from the front. However, Xiang Nan gave up his hearing. In the stormy waves, Xiang Nan suddenly sensed the existence of a shadow with his heart. At this moment, Xiang Nan raised his finger to the right. At the same time, the hand the girl reached out and landed on Xiang Nan's finger. The girl's eyes lit up and she said, "Come again." Xiang Nan let out a long breath and fell into an ethereal state. "Now, I will continue to increase my killing intent. You come and find my location." As he spoke, the surging killing intent retreated, replaced by a sudden onslaught of even more intense killing intent. The invisible killing intent seemed to have turned into a tangible steel needle. It even caused Xiang Nan's entire body to feel incomparably stinging pain, as if thousands of steel needles were really stabbing at him. However, the killing intent was still increasing. Xiang Nan could even feel that his soul was about to be shattered by the killing intent. His skin actually split open into tiny holes, and blood slowly seeped out. Xiang Nan's survival instinct tried to use his yuan qi to protect his body, but he forcefully gave up on this subconscious behavior. He let his heart and soul feel the killing intent. "Where am I?" The girl's voice rang out. In the midst of the killing intent invasion, Xiang Nan felt a shadow flicker and quickly raised his finger to the shadow. At this time, the girl's right hand and Xiang Nan's finger brushed past each other and almost collided with each other. "All right." The girl nodded and signaled Xiang Nan to open his eyes. Xiang Nan opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with shock. His body was actually bleeding. What kind of person could hurt people with just invisible killing intent? How powerful was that girl? Chapter 192 Shadow Chasing. The girl said, "To judge one's surroundings, one usually begins with four aspects: sight, hearing, smell, and touch. As for the perceptual killing intent you currently possess, it's just a higher level method. However, this perceptual killing intent still has quite a few flaws. If other people only want to compete with you, not kill you, then your ability to sense killing intent is useless. Perhaps, a killer has killed countless people. He has already treated killing as the most common thing to do, such as eating and breathing. Then the word kill has lost its meaning to him. He can really do it without killing intent. You can't even sense such a person." This was a great opportunity to learn. Xiang Nan listened carefully to the girl's words. The girl said, "There is another realm, and that is." The girl put her hands behind her back and pulled down a small grass from the wall of the cave behind her without looking at it with her eyes, heart's eye. Xiang Nan was so shocked by the girl's actions that he was speechless. He could sense the killing intent, but there was no killing intent in the vegetation. How did she determine the location of the grass behind her? The girl said, "Mind-eye is to use your body and mind to sense the outline of your surroundings. Even if you lose all 5 senses, you can still know anything that is static around you. However, at this realm, you are still unable to cultivate." "Then I'll?" Xiang Nan asked. The girl directly intercepted Xiang Nan's words and said, "Your current ability to sense killing intent is more than enough to deal with those small killers. Even some experienced killers cannot avoid your detection." "Understood." Xiang Nan picked up the little girl and walked out of the cave step by step. Thus, a brand new world appeared in front of Xiang Nan. He could suddenly feel more things. He could even feel that there were demonic beasts spying on him in the distant woods on the mountain behind him. They wanted to attack him, but they knew that their strength was insufficient and did not dare to make a move. The shadows of the 3 killers were also moving rapidly in the distant forest under Xiang Nan's perception. "He's out," one of the killers whispered. The other 2 killers immediately disappeared into the jungle. Xiang Nan carried the girl over the snow valley step by step and said loudly, "If my guess is correct, the disciples of the cavalry sect must have accidentally entered your trial grounds and been captured by you. Now I'll give you a chance to release the people from the cavalry sect. Otherwise, don't blame my subordinates for being merciless." The 3 assassins didn't react at all and treated Xiang Nan as dead. An assassin sneaked over from behind and silently sliced across the sky. The cold short blade in his hand sliced towards the back of Xiang Nan's neck. Normally, Xiang Nan would never have noticed such behavior. But at this moment, he had already grasped the ability to sense killing intent. The corner of his mouth rose slightly, and the giant saber in his hand suddenly turned around and slashed down. Clang! This saber slashed directly at the killer's short blade, sending the killer flying backwards, while Xiang Nan himself slid back 3 steps in the opposite direction. "What?" The assassin was shocked. How did he sense my location? The other 2 killers threw out 2 short blades from a dark corner. The 2 blades quietly sliced through the sky and silently shot towards Xiang Nan. However, killing intent was also condensed on the short blades. The 2 short blades had no way of hiding from Xiang Nan's perception. Xiang Nan's saber slashed, and the blade accurately shot down the 2 short blades at the same time. "This brat can feel our killing intent. Retreat." An assassin noticed the abnormality and immediately gave an order to retreat. Killers were so decisive. They never liked to fight. If they found that they were unable to cope with the situation in front of them, they would immediately retreat. They would never fight head-on foolishly. "Now you know you're going to run." Xiang Nan held the huge saber in his hand, and the Yuan Qi wings behind him spread out and flew swiftly against the snowy plains. The shadows of the 3 killers had completely disappeared from their sight. They had used powerful movement techniques to fuse themselves into the forest environment, and it was difficult to find them with the naked eye. However, in Xiang Nan's senses, the shadows of those 3 people were incomparably clear. Xiang Nan dived down and chased after the killer on the far left. The killer sensed Xiang Nan's arrival and hurriedly changed his trajectory, moving sideways to the left. Xiang Nan suddenly flapped his wings. Just as his body was about to crash into the ground, he sprinted towards the ground. With a shout, he slid out and the giant saber was already placed on the killer's neck. "How did you find me?" The killer widened his eyes and said in disbelief, "In just a few hours, how did you?" Xiang Nan flipped his right hand and the giant saber cut off the killer's neck. The three of them had killed Xiang Nan everywhere before, and Xiang Nan was not the kind of foolish righteous person who had no need to be stubborn and show mercy. If other people wanted to kill him, could he still use his morality to influence him? One killer died, and Xiang Nan immediately chased after the second killer. Thousand Leaves Hand. The second killer gave up running. He stood still and slapped his hands. The leaves on the surrounding trees fell down one after another, and those leaves suddenly stretched out like metal, swishing towards Xiang Nan. The originally soft fallen leaves turned into sharp blades that sliced through the sky and covered the earth, silently piercing through the surrounding trees and pouring towards Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan raised his giant saber high and the small sun quenched it to draw out a ray of sunlight, smashing the giant saber onto the ground. A shocking white light shot out in all directions, crushing all the fallen leaves into powder. When the killer found an opportunity, his right foot was at the bottom, and his body was spiraling like a top. He shot into the distance at an astonishing speed. Xiang Nan bent his body, and a flash step directly surpassed the second killer. The giant saber in his hand slashed horizontally, and under the killer's shocked gaze, he was killed by the saber. The third killer gave up on escaping. He stood face to face with Xiang Nan with his short blades in his hands. Xiang Nan narrowed his eyes. "I gave you a chance. You could have stopped chasing me." The assassin sneered, "Do you think a martial artist in our line of work would be afraid of death?" Xiang Nan shook his head, "You are not afraid of death, but you are also unwilling to do unnecessary death. Hand over the disciples of the cavalry sect and trade your life for theirs. This is very worthwhile." The assassin took a deep breath and said, "Who exactly are you?" Xiang Nan did not answer him. Instead, he sat down cross-legged and said, "Hand them over in 10 minutes. This is the last chance I'll give you." The killer gritted his teeth and disappeared. 5 minutes later, a dozen panicked cavalry disciples appeared in the snowy plains where Xiang Nan was. The remaining assassin stood on the tree and looked deeply at Xiang Nan. "I hope we won't meet again in the future." After saying that, the killer concealed himself. Are you a senior brother of the Haoran sect?" A cavalry sect disciple walked over in fear. Xiang Nan nodded and said, "Be careful when you go out in the future. Don't accidentally enter other people's territory without knowing it. Go back. No one will stop you." After thanking Xiang Nan for his kindness, the cavalry sect disciples hurriedly escaped to the south exit. Xiang Nan let out a sigh of relief. He only needed to obtain the Earth Desolate Wood to return to the Haoran sect. Chapter 193 Earth Desolate Wood. "By the way, have I not treated you for several hours?" Xiang Nan suddenly remembered that 4 to 5 hours had passed since he had treated her with pure elemental energy once before cultivating his perceptual killing intent. This was the first time that this little girl's illness had lasted for such a long time. The little girl seemed reluctant to talk about this. She changed the topic and said, "I saw you talking to yourself the other day with a map. You said you were looking for some kind of desolate earth wood. Are you trying to forge weapons?" Desolate earth wood is a kind of material for refining earth-grade elementary-grade weapons. Sort of. Xiang Nan didn't know whether to say it or not. She had her secrets, and Xiang Nan had her own. Since she was unwilling to confess, there was no need for Xiang Nan to tell her about her situation. "I know where the desolate earth wood is." The girl tilted her head and looked at Xiang Nan. "Oh. Where is it?" Xiang Nan hurriedly asked. The girl said, "Go deeper. The earth desolate wood grows near the nest of the eight-step scorpion." Ah! Xiang Nan was shocked. Although he didn't know much about demonic beasts, some famous demonic beasts still knew. Eight-step heavenly scorpion was a type of demonic beast that was left behind from ancient times. Its realm span was very large, and it usually ranged from the origin realm to the heaven scry realm. Earth desolate wood is something guarded by the eight-step scorpion. Although Xiang Nan was afraid, he was already flying towards the depths of the primordial swamp with the little girl in his arms. No wonder this place was named after the word primordial wilderness. Indeed, there were indeed some ancient demonic beast populations in this primordial swamp. It's not the eight-step scorpion guarding the desolate wood, but every time the eight-step scorpion rises, it will retreat from its outer shell. If those shells rot in the soil for a long time, they will grow a kind of wood. Guess what kind of wood it is? The girl said. Is there a need to guess? The closer he got to the depths of the primordial swamp, the more cautious Xiang Nan became. This place had already entered the territory of the third level of the origin core demonic beast, and Xiang Nan did not dare to be careless in the slightest. According to what this girl said, the average strength of the lowest realm eight-step scorpion population was about the fifth level of origin return. Therefore, Xiang Nan didn't stop halfway and flew all the way at low altitudes. He borrowed the dense leaves to hide his body and finally arrived at the area where the fifth level origin returning demonic beast was located. If you can't find the earth desolate wood here, give up. Xiang Nan raised his head to look at the sky. The flying demonic beasts in the sky could already be described as dense. This primordial swamp was much more dangerous than the 100-beast cliff. If there were no desolate trees in the fifth level of the origin realm, Xiang Nan did not intend to go any deeper and risk his life. Ah, there it is. Just as Xiang Nan had been searching for half an hour without a trace, the little girl suddenly pointed to the distance and shouted. Xiang Nan hurriedly looked over from afar. There was a large swamp emitting black gas in the southeast. Looking over from here, Xiang Nan himself could not see anything. He could only see a pitch-black fog. But the little girl was able to see it, which made Xiang Nan feel very impressed. I'm afraid that black gas is poisonous. Xiang Nan took out 3 antidotes, the 100 spirits pill. He swallowed one for himself, one for the little girl, and the other for the little bird to eat after crushing it into powder. After making all the preparations, Xiang Nan lowered his body and quietly circled around. The black swamp was extremely poisonous, and the surrounding grass didn't grow at all, causing this place to become an open space that was quite conspicuous. Although Xiang Nan and the little girl had already held their breath, the bubbles that emerged from the black swamp spat out a black gas that could penetrate into human skin and enter their bodies through pores. Once the two of them stood at the edge of the swamp, they felt extremely unwell and wanted to vomit. This was after swallowing the 100 spirits pill. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. This swamp looked like a circular, bubbling black lake. In the middle of the lake, there was an open space. There were many huge rocks scattered on it. Each rock was at least 70 to 80 meters long. Be careful, don't make a sound. Xiang Nan didn't dare to fly, so he used his yuan qi to grab the swamp and solidify it. Then, he stepped on the yuan qi surface and walked towards the central region step by step. When they reached the empty space, they didn't find anything unusual, let alone the existence of the 8-step heavenly scorpion. Only then did they feel relieved to search around. This is the earth desolate wood. The girl suddenly pointed. Xiang Nan looked in the direction he was heading. It turned out that the desolate earth wood was a small piece of tree root that looked like a withered tree root. It was at most half a foot tall. Its entire body was black, and it was slightly yellowish. If it weren't for her guidance, Xiang Nan wouldn't have discovered it. He would have thought that it was just a small piece of withered tree roots. He took out his giant saber and gently lifted the earth-desolate wood from the ground. Sure enough, there were many broken black shells connected to the roots of this small piece of earth-desolate wood. I got it. Let's go. Xiang Nan did not expect that this trip would be surprisingly smooth. After obtaining the earth-desolate wood, he was in a good mood. He immediately brought the little girl back along the same path. However, when he returned to the black swamp this time, something suddenly appeared in the bubbles in the swamp. What is this? Sulfur. Xiang Nan was stunned. He watched as the bubbles burst one by one, and some powder fell out. The powder had a pungent smell. Not good, hurry up and leave. The 8-step scorpion is coming out. The little girl quickly said. Xiang Nan was also very decisive. After hearing her words, he immediately ran wildly. Almost at the same time, a huge pair of pliers suddenly popped out of the swamp. The target of this pair of pliers was Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan dodged immediately, but the large pliers were empty. After a cracking sound, a powerful air cannon was clamped out. Xiang Nan was instantly sent flying by the air cannon, and at the same time, in the swamp, the owner of the pliers jumped out with a flip. Surprisingly, it was a black scorpion that jumped about 10 meters long. The scorpion shook its 2 large pliers. The pliers clenched together with a cracking sound, producing a crisp sound of metal colliding. Xiang Nan did not intend to stay and fight. He only wanted to escape, not to mention that this 8-step heavenly scorpion had already reached the 4th level of origin return. However, wanting to walk and being able to walk were 2 different things. Xiang Nan ran outside, and the outer ring also climbed out of the 8-step heavenly scorpion. Each of them was at the 4th to 5th level of origin return, which was extremely formidable. The large scorpions crawled towards Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan jumped over and tried to soar into the air. The big scorpions aimed at Xiang Nan and clicked on the pliers. A loud rumble could be heard. Every time the scorpion struck the pliers, a powerful air cannon would burst out when they collided with each other. Xiang Nan hurriedly erected his Yuan Qi shield, but his shield immediately shattered under the impact of the 2 air cannons. What a powerful force! Xiang Nan's heart sank. The strength of these 8-step heavenly scorpions was too frightening. Even an 8-step heavenly scorpion at the 4th level of origin return was stronger than a demonic beast at the 5th level of origin return at the 100-beast cliff. Moreover, they lived in groups and came out in large groups at a time. Chapter 194 8-Step Scorpion. It's not appropriate to stay here for long. Move! Xiang Nan immediately used the flash steps to flee the scene as quickly as possible. However, this was the first time that his flash steps had failed. The dozen or so 10-meter-tall 8-step heavenly scorpions in front of them actually smashed the pincers together. Xiang Nan's body had just transformed into an afterimage and was about to disappear, but he was forcefully smashed out by the huge air cannon that was fired by the large number of pliers. The air cannon was like a warhammer dozens of meters long, capable of sweeping through everything. Xiang Nan used his body to block the little girl, but he suffered a direct impact and spat out a large mouthful of blood on the spot. These things Xiang Nan took a deep breath and slashed at the 8-step scorpion in front of him. The fierce saber light flew out and landed on the head of an 8-step scorpion. However, with a crisp ding sound, the saber light was actually bounced away by the sturdy outer shell of the 8-step scorpion. This Xiang Nan was stunned. Your saber light is still too weak to injure them. Don't fight so hard and think of a way to escape. Otherwise, you will definitely die. The little girl said quickly. However, Xiang Nan couldn't avoid it. The large scorpions circled around him, raising their claws high, colliding with Xiang Nan. Ka ka ka. The crisscrossed air cannons bombarded Xiang Nan in a messy manner, and there was no escape route. Xiang Nan dodged back and forth in the middle of the room with 12 points of energy, unable to handle it. He tried to use the giant saber to cut down an air cannon, but the result was that the giant saber almost collapsed. The power of the air cannon was no less than the Yuan Qi attack of a 4th-level origin returning realm expert. Body Tyrant Lightning Drive. Xiang Nan couldn't care less. If he continued to drag it out, he would only die of exhaustion. Another air cannon attacked. Xiang Nan directly drew his saber and chopped it down. He forcefully used his body to collide with it. Even if he forcefully endured the violent impact, he would shatter the air cannon one by one, and even if he was injured, he would still escape. More and more flying demonic beasts were circling in the sky, and they were beginning to be attracted by the commotion here. Just as the Tyrant Lightning Drive was about to help Xiang Nan reach the edge of the swamp, a large scorpion suddenly swung its long tail hook and threw a fan-shaped black wind blade at Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan was shocked. He slashed down with a huge saber. The fierce saber light collided with the black wind blade in midair. The saber light was cut open by the wind blade like a fragile withered grass, and the wind blade continued to fly towards Xiang Nan. So ruthless. Xiang Nan turned around and dodged the wind blade. He felt a burning pain on his face. This was a sign of poisoning, but the pain was quickly dispelled by the effects of the 100 Spirits pill. Looking at the other 8-step scorpions, they also gave up attacking with their pincers and raised their tails. Xiang Nan's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. If they released the black wind blades together, it wouldn't be enough for him to die with 100 lives. Also, what the hell was that black wind blade? It was actually even more powerful than a human's martial skill. Do you have any other methods? If you don't, there's only one way to die. The girl's expression wasn't too good either. The heavens couldn't do it, nor could they enter the earth. Xiang Nan was forced into a corner and had no other choice but to be ruthless. He raised his left hand high up. In an instant, a beam of sunlight landed on the tip of the saber, and Xiang Nan used the little sun tempering technique. When the 8-step scorpions saw the blazing sun, they were somewhat timid. They all took a few steps back, but they did not disperse. Xiang Nan took the opportunity to charge forward, but the scorpions still brandished their tail hooks and shot out black wind blades. Xiang Nan shook his body and dodged a large number of wind blades. Finally, there was a sowing that could not be dodged, so he could only forcefully chop it with his scalp. This saber felt like it was looking at a mountain. Xiang Nan's saber was immediately blown away and shot into the air with a buzzing spin. The wind blade brushed past Xiang Nan's back, and Xiang Nan raised his right hand and quickly pulled the flying saber back with his Yuan Qi. Not even a little quenching of the sun would do. They were completely unable to deal with the 8-step scorpion. Go all out. Xiang Nan roared, his upper body slightly bent over, and a pillar of light fiercely smashed down from the sky. Xiang Nan directly used the complete sun-quenching technique, his entire body shrouded in the fierce sunlight. This time, all the scorpions were timid. They didn't dare to continue to approach Xiang Nan. Instead, They chased after Xiang Nan. They followed Xiang Nan wherever he went, but they didn't dare to go up. A large number of scorpions were afraid of the power of the sun and didn't even dare to attack. Only a few 5th-level origin returning scorpions tentatively waved their wind blades at Xiang Nan. In comparison, Xiang Nan's pressure was much less. He ran wildly all the way, defending against the scorpions' attacks. However, those scorpions were not willing to let go of Xiang Nan and directly followed him out of the swamp. They were actually still following him in the jungle. Xiang Nan directly flew into the sky, and the dense flying demonic beasts in the air also scattered in panic. They were all very afraid of the power of the sun's power. Originally, he thought that this would be considered safe, but suddenly, a few sharp howls came from afar. First, a few small black dots appeared at the junction of heaven and earth, and then, those black dots got closer and closer, becoming larger and larger. Xiang Nan did not wait foolishly. He was trying his best to fly south quickly, but the few black dots were even faster. He chased after Xiang Nan at nearly 3 times his speed. What the hell is this? It's so big. Xiang Nan could clearly see the true faces of the little black dots at close range. They were actually 3 500-meter tall flying gorillas. What was the concept of 500 meters? Standing in front of the 3 of them, Xiang Nan was not as big as one of their toes. Damn it, there's actually such a huge creature in the world. Xiang Nan was stunned. The fact that orangutans could fly was strange enough, but their bodies were a little too big. These are all ancient flying apes. The girl lowered her voice and quickly said, ancient creatures are huge. If you have the chance to see an ancient demonic beast, that would be truly shocking. I'm not interested. Xiang Nan flew wildly all the way, while the 3 ancient flying apes surrounded Xiang Nan in a triangular shape. Judging from their eagerness, they clearly had the impulse to attack. One of the flying apes waved its huge fist in an attempt to smash Xiang Nan down. Xiang Nan hurriedly dodged a dive, while the flying ape's fist flashed across the sunlight and immediately let out a few chi-chi sounds. The ancient flying ape shrieked and retracted its right fist, its eyes filled with fear. These 3 ancient flying apes all possessed the strength of a Heaven Origin Realm elementary stage. To be honest, Xiang Nan's power of the sun could not harm them at all. It was just that they did not understand what the power of the sun was. Only they had a natural fear of this light in their hearts. I can't hold on any longer. Xiang Nan felt that the power of the sun had lasted for too long and was about to reach its limit. The 3 ancient flying apes did not dare to approach Xiang Nan, nor did they want to leave just like that. On the contrary, the 3 of them were a little angry. They landed on the surrounding mountains one after another, releasing their rage in a tyrannical manner. The flying apes landed on a mountain top and angrily bombarded the mountain with their fists. The majestic mountain peak was blasted open by a few punches. The cracks that stretched from the peak to the foot of the mountain collapsed just like that. Large chunks of rocks shot through the sky, piercing through countless flying demonic beasts in an instant. The scene was as if it was doomsday. Chapter 195 Bow Not. Xiang Nan dodged the flying rocks in a sorry state, feeling his scalp numb. These damned gorillas were too frightening. How terrifying was it to smash a mountain with 3 fists? Hurry up. The girl urged, hurry up and think of a way to scare them away. These 3 beasts don't dare to approach you now. Wait a moment, they will lose their rationality angrily. Perhaps they will rush up. Xiang Nan knew that what she said was true and did not dare to delay. He immediately became ruthless and gave it his all. Thinking of this, he immediately strengthened the quenching of the sun, and the power of the sun struck Xiang Nan's back with an unprecedented intensity. Xiang Nan bent down and desperately absorbed the power of the sun. He used the lightning trembled martial technique to smash his fist into the air. In an instant, the sunlight spread out in a ring, and a huge ring of white light spread in all directions. Dozens of weak flying demonic beasts were instantly wiped to ashes after being engulfed by this white light. The 3 ancient flying apes were also frightened. They didn't dare to approach the white light at all. They immediately waved their arms and fled into the distance in a sorry state. Xiang Nan's punch was naturally powerful enough, but the price was even greater. He immediately entered the backlash stage. The power of the sun was overused. Not good. With a buzz in his mind, Xiang Nan used all of his strength and flew south with the little girl. Finally, the blood in his body boiled and he fell from the sky. Thunderclap's punch had not only exhausted Xiang Nan's yuan qi and the power of the sun, it had also caused him to be devoured by the power of the sun. At this moment, Peng's landing sound burned him. The flames on Xiang Nan's body instantly sprayed out more than 2 feet tall, and then the flames rapidly contracted into his body. The skin on his body was like charcoal that was about to burn to ashes. Dots of sparks flickered in many places. The little bird anxiously jumped around on Xiang Nan's body, but there was nothing it could do. What kind of cultivation technique is this? The girl frowned, stretched out her fingers, and poked Xiang Nan's vital acupoints several times. The terrible burning pain still haunted Xiang Nan, and this time, his body was corroded by the unbearable cold, and he fainted instantly. When Xiang Nan opened his eyes again, he found himself lying flat on a bamboo bed. He wanted to do it, but he found that his entire body was in pain, and it was extremely cold. The most troublesome thing was that the backlash of the sun god technique had not disappeared yet. However, the coldness that was flowing in his body wrapped around the power of the sun and cancelled each other out. However, the power of the sun was too fierce. No matter what, it could not be extinguished by the cold. It only temporarily guaranteed Xiang Nan's safety. "You're awake." The door was pushed open and a graceful girl walked in. Her facial features were so exquisite that no one could find a single flaw. Her long black hair was tied into a big bow. "It's you." Xiang Nan sucked in a breath of cold air and grasped the huge saber leaning against the bed, but he did not have the strength to lift it. Wasn't this woman the demonic woman of the heavenly demon sect that appeared in Haotian City? She even asked herself to send a letter to Senior Half-Gourd. The girl put her hands behind her back and looked at Xiang Nan with a smile. "Why, can't you move it?" she said. The sun energy and cold energy in Xiang Nan's body fluttered everywhere, and his meridians were also in a state of disorder, unable to release any yuan qi at all. "Where's the little girl?" Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and shouted, "You witch, where did you take the little girl?" The girl tilted her head and pointed at her nose. "You mean me?" "Ah." Xiang Nan was suddenly stunned. This demonic woman and the little girl looked too much alike. No, they are clearly the same person. How could it be you, demonic woman? Xiang Nan wished he could slap himself a few times. Why didn't he recall it earlier? No wonder he always felt that the little girl looked familiar. She was actually a member of the Heavenly Devil religion. If I knew it was her, I shouldn't have saved her back then. I'm not called a witch. The girl sat beside Xiang Nan's bed and pushed him back. Xiang Nan struggled to sit up again. He had experienced how crazy the people of the Heavenly Devil religion were. "Don't move." The girl pressed down on Xiang Nan's chest and injected another strand of cold energy into it. Your cultivation technique is very strange. It has left behind a few strands of extremely young residual energy in your body, but it can't be dispersed. With my 5th level Xiantian realm, I can only temporarily restrain those few strands of masculinity. Looks like if you want to survive, you can only return to the Haran sect to find your master. Do you still remember me? Xiang Nan touched his face. Could it be that the effects of his aging pill had passed? Of course I remember. We met once in Haotian City, didn't we? The girl touched Xiang Nan's forehead and said, "Don't worry, you saved my life earlier. I won't let you go this time. We're still in the primordial swamp. I've already found the best alchemist there. I'll be back in a moment." Sure enough, within the time it took to make a cup of tea, an elderly alchemist pushed the door open with a cradle on his arm. He first helped Xiang Nan with his pulse, then examined Xiang Nan's eyelids. Finally, he frowned and said, "This old man has never seen this kind of illness before. I have 2 excellent Millennium Spirit ginseng stalks here. Help him to drink it and see if it can be relieved." Another 1,000-year-old spirit ginseng. The girl shook her head and grabbed the old man's head. Immediately after, the old man turned into a dried corpse. "Damn it, what are you doing?" Xiang Nan watched this scene helplessly, but he couldn't stop it. He immediately roared angrily. "What are you doing? He can't cure you. Of course he wants to kill you. If you can't cure it, you have to kill it. What kind of logic is this? How can you kill for no reason?" Xiang Nan's eyes were red with anger. The girl didn't care either. She took out 2 2,000-year-old spirit ginseng from the cradle of the dead old man and said, "Wait, I'll make some medicine for you." As she spoke, she turned around and went to the outer room. Xiang Nan lay motionless on the bed, feeling extremely aggrieved. After the girl brought the ginseng soup, Xiang Nan directly knocked over the bowl of medicine and said coldly, "I don't need you to take care of me." The girl sucked in the soup with her mouth, and before the medicine could land on the ground, it was sucked into her mouth. Immediately after, she pinched open Xiang Nan's mouth to mouth and swallowed the soup into Xiang Nan's mouth. Then, she pushed Xiang Nan's back and Xiang Nan swallowed it with a grunt. "Bah! Bah!" Xiang Nan spat and wiped his mouth hard. "What are you doing?" The girl giggled, "Look at you, you have such a big temper. You were obviously very gentle to me earlier. I didn't know your identity back then." Xiang Nan pointed at the old man on the ground. "This old gentleman is old, yet he is picking herbs in such a dangerous place. How can you kill him ruthlessly?" The girl said, "Why should I pity the lives of others and treat myself unfairly? You have such a strange idea." Chapter 196 Kill Again. Xiang Nan knew that if he tried to reason with the people of the heavenly devil religion, it would be a waste of effort and he wouldn't even open his mouth. Also, my name is not Demonis, my name is Meng Dai. The journey to Donghai province is not short. I will deliver you safely. Late at night, the dream butterfly floated high up in the air in Nameless Town. Behind her, there were 3 black dragons circling around. The 3 black dragons were alive, but they emitted a serious evil aura. The 3 dragons circled around the dream butterfly. If one looked closely, there was another shadow with a blurry outline besides the 3 black dragons. Those shadows tried to condense several times, but all of them failed. Meng Dai muttered to herself, "For some reason, my 9 dragons heavenly fiend cultivation technique is 40% complete. I can't practice it anyway. Earlier, I almost lost my life to a devil. This time, I must go back and ask my master for advice." There were many people in the town who were sleeping late. They were standing on the ground, staring at Dream Butterfly in shock. Dream Butterfly glanced at them with the corner of her eyes. She raised her right hand and those people turned into dried corpses and fell to the ground, turning into powder. Xiang Nan suddenly felt a burning sensation in his sleep, followed by a bone-chilling cold. Two contradictory situations appeared in his body at the same time, tormenting him to the point that he tossed and turned, sweating profusely. Half asleep and half awake, he saw Mu Dai feeding him ginseng soup in a trance. The next morning, Meng Dai helped Xiang Nan to set off. When he walked out of the house and saw that the town was empty, Xiang Nan frowned. "This scene again, was it you who did it?" Meng Dai said, "So what if I do? Do you still have the strength to kill me?" Xiang Nan said angrily, "Are you addicted to killing?" "No." Meng Dai's words made Xiang Nan choke half to death. The dream butterfly wrapped its yuan qi around Xiang Nan's body and flew towards the Eastern Sea province in the south. When they arrived at Border City, Meng Dai arranged an inn for Xiang Nan. She smiled and said, "Lay down here obediently. I'll go do something." Outside the Border City, the Heavenly Demon sect was launching their third death attack, and a great battle was about to begin. Luo Fei's expression was gloomy, and he was ready to risk his life again. But at this moment, a message suddenly flashed through the sky and landed behind the Heavenly Devil cult. Immediately after, the densely packed Heavenly Devil cult retreated like a tidal wave. "General, this is," a deputy general pointed at the retreating Heavenly Demon sect members in confusion. Luo Fei frowned deeply, "I don't know what they are up to. In short, we must tighten the embankment and not relax." "Yes." The lieutenant general nodded, "Everyone, don't let down your guard. Continue to maintain level 1 alert." On the other side, Dream Butterfly had already taken Xiang Nan away from Border City and continued south. The speed at which a Heavenly Yuan Realm martial artist flew was extremely fast. Xiang Nan had traveled nearly 300,000 kilometers, flying for more than a month. However, if a Heavenly Yuan expert like Dream Butterfly were to fly at full speed, they would be able to arrive in about 4 to 5 days. However, Xiang Nan was often sick, so Dream Butterfly had no choice but to stop at any time to suppress the power of the sun for him. The next day, the two landed in a city. Meng Dai ordered a table of delicate dishes. She did not eat it herself, but only looked at Xiang Nan with a smile on her chin. Originally, Xiang Nan could not eat, but his body was weak. He was tormented to death by the power of one sun and one Eem, so he could not endure without replenishing his food. "Come here." Meng Dai hooked her fingers at the waiter. She was already very outstanding, and almost half of the diners in the restaurant were looking at her. The waiter smiled and ran over, "What do you have to say?" Meng Dai said, "Is there any famous doctor in this city?" "Yes." The waiter hurriedly said, "We have a Tier 3 alchemist in South City. He has a reputation. No matter what kind of difficult and complicated illness he has, it's right to look for him. This is that, the price is a little high." "I see. Go." Meng Dai waved her hand, but the waiter stared blankly at her face. He was stunned for a moment, but he didn't move. "Do I look good?" Meng Dai raised her head and asked with a smile. The waiter subconsciously nodded and said in a daze, "It looks good." "How beautiful?" Meng Dai asked with a smile. The waiter said, "You look good. You are the most beautiful girl I have ever seen in my life." "Oh." Dream Butterfly dragged her chin, her rootless and translucent long fingernails swaying back and forth. She was exceptionally enchanting. Then if you see someone more beautiful than me, wouldn't I be the most beautiful girl? She said. As she spoke, her right hand slightly shook, and an afterimage flashed by. The waiter suddenly covered his face and fell to the ground, screaming miserably as he rolled on the ground. On the table, there were 2 blood-colored sparkling eyeballs. Demonis! Xiang Nan angrily kicked the table and said with a huge saber in his hand, "You hurt innocent people again. Today, I will fight you." Meng Dai put her hands on her cheeks and looked at Xiang Nan charmingly. "Good brother, why are you so fierce to me? Didn't you say that you wanted to protect me in the primordial swamp?" Actually, this dream butterfly looked to be in her early 20s, a few years older than Xiang Nan, but she was clearly teasing Xiang Nan by calling her brother Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan grabbed the saber and chopped at her. However, she raised her white jade-like palm slightly and used her 2 fingernails to grab the weak blade. The surrounding diners were all stunned and fled in a panic. The dream butterfly grabbed Xiang Nan's arm and said, "Good brother, let's go. I will definitely protect you and take good care of you." After saying that, she carried Xiang Nan and soared into the sky, transforming into a streak of light that flew straight to South City. The reputation of a Tier 3 alchemist could be said to be prominent in such a medium-sized city. Not only were there many people coming to seek treatment, there were even many martial artists waiting outside with spirit herbs in their hands, wanting the alchemist to help them refine pills. However, this alchemist was very arrogant. He only received 5 guests a day, and 1 more was missing. The alchemist's residence was a quiet and elegant manor with 4 floors of courtyards. The first and last floors were gardens. A little boy stood proudly at the door and said to the crowd in line, "Master has already received 4 people today, and there is still 1 last spot. Who exactly are you going to come?" Everyone fought for themselves. Several ferocious martial artists pulled out their long sabers on the spot, scaring everyone back. One of the bearded 3rd stage Gui Yuan warriors shouted, "The last spot today is mine. Whoever dares to snatch it from me, I will take his dog's life." At this time, Dream Butterfly landed with Xiang Nan. The moment she landed, she released Xiang Nan and her body turned into a black shadow that whistled past. Immediately after, before Xiang Nan's body weakened, she returned to her original position, supported Xiang Nan's arm, and said to the little boy, "It's my turn." The little boy was stunned for a moment. He pointed at the people standing on the spot and said, "There are so many people. You came the last. Why? Why hadn't the last 3 words been spoken yet?" Everyone on the scene had actually fallen to the ground calmly, head after head rolling on the ground. The darkness crushed more than 100 people, and in an instant, they all died. Even the strong man at the 3rd level of origin return didn't have time to let out a miserable scream. "I'm the only one left." Dream Butterfly smiled. The little boy had never seen such a scene before, and he was so frightened that he cried loudly and ran into the courtyard. "You killed again." Xiang Nan was going crazy with anger. Chapter 197 Return. Dream Butterfly took Xiang Nan inside and kept comforting him along the way. "Good brother, don't worry. I didn't kill your family. Why are you in such a hurry? I'll kill you. Be good. Oh, wait until we're done with our illness before slaughtering you." Within the manor, a white-bearded old man was waiting by the pill furnace, seemingly refining some kind of pill. Before the little boy could arrive, Meng Dai had already brought Xiang Nan in. She said, "Old sir, treat my brother." The alchemist was sitting in the imperial chair with a teacup in his hand. He only raised his eyes to glance at Xiang Nan and said, I can't tell what happened to this young master. Oh. Really? Dream Butterfly revealed 5 sharp fingernails. The alchemist didn't care and said, I've seen many threats. If you don't have any other methods, then please go back. Dream Butterfly took out a pointed white hat from her storage ring and put it on her head. The alchemist was so frightened that he almost slipped off the chair. He hurriedly supported the table and chair and sat back down. He said, Quick, hurry up and bring young master over. This old man will give him a pulse. The alchemist gave the Xiang Nan pulse a full 10 minutes before revealing an ugly expression. This young master has 2 powers in his body. One is yin and the other is yang. They are entangled and restricted by each other. I have never heard of these 2 powers before. With my 3-legged cat's kung fu, I'm afraid. Can't you see? Meng Dai's expression turned cold as she reached out her right hand towards the alchemist. Xiang Nan was quick-witted. He had already expected her to kill someone, so he hurriedly grabbed her wrist and coughed, You dare. Looking at the alchemist again, his face had already turned pale from fear. Meng Dai nodded and withdrew her life-threatening right hand. She said, Give my good brother a prescription. Even if he can't be cured, at the very least, I need to make sure that he doesn't die within a few days. This is still possible. The alchemist wiped away his cold sweat and wrote down the names of dozens of spirit herbs on the paper. Then, he handed the prescription to Meng Dai trembling. Young master is in a strange state. With the help of those strands of cold energy, this recipe should be able to maintain young master's lifespan for 2 to 3 days. However, once the 3-day limit expires, you must find a better spiritual herb to eat. Otherwise, the alchemist summoned the boy who had cried in fright several times, grabbed dozens of spiritual herbs according to the prescription, and even helped Xiang Nan make medicinal pills on the spot, but he didn't even dare to take the money. If he dared to accept the heavenly devil religion's money, would he still want to die? Dream Butterfly helped Xiang Nan continue on his way. The journey was not smooth. Although she flew fast enough, Xiang Nan would occasionally explode. She had to stop and give Xiang Nan a fresh breath of cold air and feed Xiang Nan a medicinal pill. Medicinal pills and pills were only different in name order, but they were 2 different things. The scene of Dream Butterfly taking care of Xiang Nan was exactly the same as when Xiang Nan took care of her in the primordial forest. The only difference was that Xiang Nan would not kill at that time. It was night, and the 2 of them landed in a forest. The Dream Butterfly was bored and started a bonfire. Xiang Nan really didn't want to talk to her, but after enduring a few times, he finally couldn't help but ask, Can we discuss something? Meng Dai's eyes immediately lit up and she said, Are you willing to talk to me? Xiang Nan said, Can you stop killing people casually? Other people are also raised by their parents. Why are they killed by you for no reason? Meng Dai rolled her eyes and said, I really don't understand you so-called decent people. Killing people is like eating rabbits by wolves. It's just a cycle of the heavenly Tao. There's no need to make you so angry. Then can he be the same? Xiang Nan said angrily, Wolves eat wild rabbits to survive. Could it be that you also killed to survive? Alright. I'll listen to you. Don't be angry. Meng Dai curled her lips, clearly unhappy. Also. So what, my good brother? Dream Butterfly was helpless. Xiang Nan said, I want to be convenient. Please excuse yourself. Meng Dai's eyes lit up again, let me take a look." "What?" Xiang Nan was stunned, as if he had heard wrongly. "Nothing." Meng Dai covered her mouth and giggled, sending Xiang Nan into the bushes. These corrupt cultivators had strange personalities, and their temperaments changed from time to time, making it hard for others to understand. When Xiang Nan staggered out with the tree trunk, the dream butterfly was using yuan qi to cut the tree into boards and wrap the boards around it into wooden barrels. Then, it poured clear spring water and used yuan qi to heat the spring water. "I haven't taken a bath since the primordial swamp. My body stinks." Meng Dai walked up and took off Xiang Nan's clothes. "What are you doing? Stop, stop." Xiang Nan was stripped clean 3 times and 5 times before being thrown into the wooden barrel. "Your body is weak. I'll help you wash it. You know, I've never served anyone before." After saying that, Dream Butterfly also began to take off her clothes. Xiang Nan hurriedly closed his eyes. "Do you still have any shame? Don't you know the difference between men and women?" However, the Dream Butterfly didn't care at all and had already entered with one leg. "Wait for me. Sooner or later, I will kill you." Alright, 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 alright. Xiang Nan had encountered many enemies, and Xiang Nan had fought many battles. However, Xiang Nan had never experienced such a thing as being kidnapped by an enemy and the enemy healing him. He did not know how to deal with it. However, no matter what, killing so many innocent people for no reason was something that Xiang Nan could not tolerate. However, that Dream Butterfly's personality was just like that. She did not want to look down on people's lives, but in her eyes, killing people was the same principle as beasts hunting for food. There was no psychological burden on her. One night later, she continued to bring Xiang Nan along and landed in a city halfway to search for better spiritual herbs. Unfortunately, she had just promised Xiang Nan not to kill anyone yesterday, and this time, she had started a massacre, killing a spirit herb shop. Of course, she don't have any money with her. How can she get the spiritual herbs without killing people? Xiang Nan was angry several times, but unfortunately, he was powerless to recover. On the 7th day, Dream Butterfly finally sent Xiang Nan back to Haotian City and parted at the gate of Haran sect. "Good brother." Meng Dai stroked Xiang Nan's chin and said, "You saved my life. You've seen my body. From now on, I'm yours. I still need to look for you in a few days. I will propose marriage to you at that time." Xiang Nan thought that she was talking madness again and didn't bother to pay attention, so he turned around and went back to his sect. Should we let Master come out and get rid of this demonic woman? Keeping her would be a big problem. However, he turned around and saw that there was no trace of the Dream Butterfly. Haran sect. Master Xiang Nan sat down outside the Sun Palace, feeling as if he had returned home. His nervous tension immediately relaxed. Su Tsayue's shadow flashed and grabbed Xiang Nan's arm. "Have you been bitten back? Follow me and I will help you expel the residual energy." Xiang Nan relaxed and felt surrounded by a great sense of security. He immediately fainted. Chapter 198 New Ranking. Su Kaiyu put Xiang Nan in the place where she often practiced martial arts and let Xiang Nan sit cross-legged. "Thank you, Master." Xiang Nan woke up and turned around. "Don't speak." Su Kaiyu interrupted Xiang Nan and placed her right index finger on Xiang Nan's chest. After investigating Xiang Nan's body, Su Kaiyu said, "There are 2 kinds of power in your body. One is the power of the sun of our sect, and the other is a very cold power that entangles the power of the sun. Fortunately, this cold energy exists. Otherwise, the remaining sun energy will flow into your spiritual sea. If that happens, even if you are lucky enough to survive, your cultivation will be destroyed. Now, let me extract the power of the sun from your body. As she spoke, Su Tsayue's fingers emitted a pulling force. The force did not enter Xiang Nan's body, but served as a guide. The power of the sun in Xiang Nan's body seemed to have seen even more delicious food. It quickly ran from Xiang Nan's body to Su Tsayue's body, and was slightly shaken by Su Tsayue's body, immediately dissipating. Master, aren't you going to ask me how that cold energy came about? Xiang Nan asked curiously. Individuals have their own good fortune. Why should I ask? This time, Su Kaiyu changed her method. She no longer used her fingers to pull him, but instead directly attracted him. A powerful force instantly sucked out the cold energy that remained in Xiang Nan's body, and Su Kaiyu threw it into the air. Those streaks of cold energy quickly condensed into black marks in the air, causing the temperature of the scene to drop considerably. Not yet. Su Kaiyu injected a pure yuan qi into Xiang Nan with her Haotian pure yuan technique and said, "Your meridians are already in complete disorder. Let me help you sort them out now." After everything was done, Xiang Nan's body still felt very weak, but the vigorous power in his body began to slowly recover. Restore yourself. There's no problem anymore. Su Kaiyu nodded in satisfaction and turned to leave. Xiang Nan took a deep breath and drew circles in front of his chest with both hands. He also began to circulate the Haotian pure essence technique. The backlash lasted for too long, and the damage done to Xiang Nan was too long. Xiang Nan had recovered for 2 days and 2 nights before he finally recovered to his peak condition. He ate something casually and washed up briefly before quickly rushing to the credit hall. When he returned, he had already wasted nearly 3 days in order to expel the remnants of the sun's power from his body. He did not know if the contribution he had obtained this time would be able to reach the highest ranking on the Eagle rankings. After arriving at the credit hall, the students in the Eagle Hall immediately noticed Xiang Nan. Because the suns had improved rapidly a few times in the past, Xiang Nan had already become a famous super team on the Eagle rankings. Everyone paid too much attention to Xiang Nan. Many students had already handed in their assignments and were ready to leave, but when they saw Xiang Nan enter, they hurriedly followed him back. Guess how many rankings Xiang Nan's sons can improve this time? Someone muttered softly. The person next to him replied, "I estimate that he will only be able to increase his rank by 50 if he survives, because he is already a second-class team and is also doing a second-class mission." Yes, that makes sense. The person who spoke first thought so, and said, "First-class missions are all very simple. It is still relatively easy for him to advance quickly, but second-class missions are very difficult." "I don't think so." Another person interrupted, "I'm afraid that Xiang Nan will take on a second-class special mission this time. I think he might be able to increase his ranking by 70 to 80. Don't tell me you've forgotten that he picked 3 seniors from the second-grade academy on his own." The content of their round was related to the ranking mechanism of the Eagle rankings. Previously, when Xiang Nan was a first-class team, the maximum increase in the upper limit was 50 places. That was to prevent anyone from cheating and occupy the Eagle rankings with just one perfect mission. However, after the team reached the second level, this rule was changed, and the upper limit was changed to a maximum of 100. This was because if a team could rely on doing missions to advance to this level, they would basically be able to avoid the suspicion of cheating. The student who said that Xiang Nan could increase his ranking by 70 to 80 places guessed that Xiang Nan's ranking would increase by more than 50 places and less than 100 places based on this rule. Everyone was discussing as they waited to see the final result. If it weren't for the dignified Eagle Palace, they would have been willing to make a bet. As for how they talked, Xiang Nan didn't listen. He was still waiting for himself to finish his task and quickly improve his resistance to electricity. After the staff at the window counter took over Xiang Nan's mission scroll, they were stunned for a moment, and then they carefully confirmed it. A shocked expression appeared on his face. "This is your reward." The staff member maintained a surprised expression and returned the waste token to Xiang Nan. 2 second-grade special missions, a total of 200 credits, plus the 50 credits that Xiang Nan had previously left behind, gave him a total of 250 credits at his waist. After receiving the waste token, he turned to look at the Eagle rankings. To be honest, he didn't know how many rankings he could improve. Because he wasn't the only one who knew how to do special missions, and there were many experts who were also doing them, the competition was about the speed at which a mission could be completed. Presumably, there shouldn't be too few of them, right? Xiang Nan murmured to himself. Although he had spent more than a month on this mission, it wasn't a very fast time among the teams doing special missions. However, he had already completed 2 missions. After completing 2 missions in the time of a special mission, he was afraid that he should at least increase his ranking by more than 150. This was an optimistic view of his ranking in Xiang Nan's heart. At the same time, all the students who stayed behind also raised their heads high and watched as the staff member climbed up high, erasing the name of the sons from the 300th place. Then, the staff member continued to climb. How many will there be? Why am I even more nervous now than when I saw my team improve their rankings? Everyone started discussing. They weren't really supportive of Xiang Nan. Rather, they were expecting miracles to be human traits. Everyone wanted to see if Xiang Nan could do better. However, the staff member had already climbed past the height of 250 people. "Look! I told you. Xiang Nan will definitely not only increase his rank by 50, the student said smugly. Everyone began to get excited. Seeing that the staff had already climbed past the height of 200 and were still climbing up, the excitement in everyone's eyes had already turned into shock. What? You've already climbed past the 100th rank, and you're still going up? When the worker reached the 150th altitude, Xiang Nan nodded and thought to himself that he would probably stop here. However, the result surprised Xiang Nan himself. That staff member was actually still moving up. Damn it! Someone cried out in alarm. How many missions has Xiang Nan done? It's already 150, and it's still rising. In the end, the staff member stopped at the 100th place. He was slightly shocked on the Eagle list. All teams below the 99th place collectively fell by 1 ranking. In the gap behind the 99, the staff member wrote down the words Team Sons and Peak Sons in a dragon-like manner. Chapter 199 12 Joint Examinations. Wow! An incredulous exclamation rang out from the crowd. The Sons had increased their rankings by 200. He had already entered the top 100 ranks. In other words, Xiang Nan was still the fastest at completing the same level of difficulty. Warm applause rang out for the Sons once again. The reason why Xiang Nan's sons would cause quite a stir every time they upgraded their rankings was partly because Xiang Nan was too outstanding. He supported a team by himself, and every time he upgraded, it would be the highest limit. On the other hand, they thought that the Sons were special because there was only one team in the entire Haran sect that belonged to the Sun Peak. This scene caused Xiang Nan's blood to boil, and he couldn't help but feel excited. "Master, it would be great if you could see this scene as well. This disciple must make those who once ridiculed Sun Peak look at Sun Peak in a new light." Originally, after completing the mission this time, Xiang Nan was prepared to rest for a period of time and wholeheartedly greet the special college examination, striving to enter the second grade academy. However, since he was already so close to the first place, he decided to do it to the end. "Hello, I want to take another mission." Xiang Nan turned around and found that the staff member was also very excited. "I've been waiting for your words." The staff member immediately brought over the mission list and said, "I'm still waiting to see if you can continue to refresh the history of the Hawk rankings." "Thank you." Xiang Nan took over the mission directory to see if he could find a special mission that would take less time. Xiang Nan's eyes froze as he landed on a mission list. This mission made Xiang Nan feel a little strange. Mission details: Rank 2 Special Mission, Refining 10 Essence Transformation Pills, Mission Duration, 3 days, 100 credits rewarded. This Xiang Nan pointed at the mission and asked the staff member, "The last time I saw it, there was no such mission. Why did it suddenly come out?" What surprised Xiang Nan was that after the new disciples entered the sect, there was indeed a peak demand for origin transformation pills. Many Xiantian realm students would exchange for origin transformation pills, but Xiang Nan had already seen it last time. The nature sect's origin transformation pills were still well stocked. Could it be that another batch of new disciples have entered the sect? The staff member was not obliged to answer such a question, but he had a good impression of Xiang Nan and said, "Yes." After a few words from the staff, Xiang Nan finally understood the cause and effect. 15 days later, the first-grade college would conduct a special examination and recruit 10 first-grade students to enter the second-grade college. However, this was not a formal entrance examination. The formal entrance examination was called the Academy Examination. It was the collective examination of the entire first-grade and second-grade colleges. At that time, there was no limit to the 10 lists. As long as you had enough talent, you could enter a higher grade college. However, due to some time ago, the various sects of the Hautian Empire decided to make a big fuss over this academy exam after discussion. In other words, the academy exam of the second grade academy this time would be a joint exam of 12 sects. At that time, another 11 sects would also come to the Haran sect to take the exam with the second-grade students of the Haran sect. To put it bluntly, it would be a competition of superiority and inferiority. In this 12-sect joint examination, if the disciples of the Haran sect obtained excellent results, they would naturally enter a higher-grade academy. As for the other 11 second or third-grade disciples, if they achieved good results, they would be promoted to core disciples after returning to their own sects. This was the first time that Xiang Nan had managed to catch up with the 12 joint examinations. Of course, the prerequisite was that Xiang Nan could pass the special college examination and enter the second-grade academy. As for the origin transformation pills, they weren't prepared for the Haran sect. Everyone knew that the Haran sect had spared no effort in helping other sections. Therefore, before the 12 joint examinations, the Haran sect would send a team of excellent teachers and disciples to visit a large group of people and preach martial arts in those sects. These essence transformation pills were actually gifts that the patrol team had to bring to other sects. "So that's the case," Xiang Nan laughed. The staff member nodded and said, "Yes, our Blue Tide continent has always been ranked at the bottom among the other continents. It is precisely the Blue Tide continent's second and third grade sects, other than our Haran sect, that are too weak. That's why our Haran sect came up with this idea. We'll bring along the other sects and give a lecture on our martial arts techniques and martial arts theories to the other sections. Everyone will exchange what they have for what they have. This is a good thing. Xiang Nan nodded excitedly. He was also proud of being able to join such an open-minded sect. Then I will accept this mission. I will seize the time to complete it. Xiang Nan accepted the mission and immediately ran in the direction of Zhaohua Peak. A good thing was a good thing, but the pressure also came. It was the same as Xiang Nan competing not only with his fellow disciples, but also with the other 11 disciples of the sect. This was the first joint examination of the 12 sections. If he could get a good ranking, he would definitely give the Haoran sect face to Taiyang Feng. However, if he failed miserably, he would lose face to the entire the Haotian Empire. What was the reason? Only the Haoran sect had the academy grade setting. The other sects only had the difference between outer disciples and core disciples. The students of the second grade college of the Haoran sect were generally at the 2nd to 5th level of the origin return realm. As for the other sects, they didn't have any so-called few grade colleges, so they would use their cultivation realms as the assessment criteria, and they would select a group of powerful experts at the 2nd to 5th level of origin return to participate in the academy exam. Perhaps these people had already stayed in their own sect for 3 to 4 years, or even 4 to 5 years. Whether it was combat experience or martial arts, they weren't necessarily inferior to the disciples of the Haoran sect. At this moment, Xiang Nan was only at the 1st level of origin return. If he were to enter the 12-sect joint examination, he would be at the bottom. The pressure on him would still be tremendous. After Xiang Nan arrived at the Fortune Peak, he immediately started the preparatory work for refining the essence transformation pill. At this moment, there were high-grade senior brothers and sisters from Fortune Peak in the other pill rooms. They were also stepping up their efforts to refine the origin transformation pill, planning to produce a large batch of pills. For Xiang Nan, refining the essence transformation pill was no longer a problem. With this good pill room, a good pill furnace, and a good pill fire, Xiang Nan could refine a top-grade essence transformation pill every 3 hours. He didn't stop day and night, and it took him 30 hours to complete the preparation of 10 top-grade origin transformation pills. He didn't care about resting and hurried down the mountain to the credit hall. However, at the entrance of the credit hall, he saw a large group of people shouting something lively. He didn't know who they were watching. Who has such great influence? Xiang Nan was slightly shocked and squeezed into the crowd. Chapter 200 Climb to the Peak of Honor. Normally, there were many people in the credit hall, but most of them were inside the credit hall. This time, there were so many people gathered at the entrance, which attracted Xiang Nan's attention. Those students all squeezed in like crazy. Xiang Nan tried a few times but was pushed out again. He was helpless and could not use force against his fellow disciples. He could only follow the example of other disciples standing on the periphery and use his Yuan Qi to condense a thick air cushion under his feet. Only then could he stand up and barely see the situation in the middle of the crowd. It turned out that these disciples were surrounded by a tall female disciple. That female disciple looked to be around 19 or 20 years old, and her realm was the Heaven Origin realm. She was extremely powerful. This female disciple was very tall. Even if she was standing among a group of male disciples, she was still outstanding. She was probably 1.8 meters tall. Moreover, she had a pair of shocking long legs. This figure was rare among women that Xiang Nan had seen. A 19-year-old heavenly Yuan expert would probably only be able to see him in the Haoran sect. Who is that? Xiang Nan asked a disciple beside him. The disciple glanced at Xiang Nan with disdain. He originally didn't intend to answer Xiang Nan, but after seeing Xiang Nan's appearance, he smiled and said, "So it's Xiang Nan of the Sons. You don't know that? That's our Haran sect's famous senior sister Xue Qi. Mu Sueki, the daughter of a prominent family in Haojing. Originally, the proud sons of heaven in Haojing did not have to come all the way to join the Haran sect, because Haojing itself had a royal college. The royal college was an official sect officially established by the Haotian Empire. Its overall strength was on par with the Haran sect, while the Haran sect was a folk sect. The supreme leader of the royal college was the emperor of the Haotian Empire, the #1 expert of the Haotian Empire, Emperor Haotian. As for Hao Ran sect's sect master, Elder Zhang Haran of the Heavenly Tao, he was the second strongest expert in the Hao Tian Empire. Although there was little friction between the royal college and the various sects, there was also a sensitive situation where officials and civilians were opposed. Therefore, the royal college had specially selected a few proud children who could have entered the royal college, but were sent to the folk sect to reconcile the relationship between the government and the sect. Mu Sueki was one of them, and she was also one of the most outstanding amongst the proud children of heaven. Firstly, she came from Haojing. Secondly, she came from a prominent background. Thirdly, she had an extraordinary position in the Haran sect, and she was also the champion of the last academy exam. Coupled with her outstanding appearance, she was known as the Flower of Haran, and was one of the top beauties of the Haran sect. However, in Xiang Nan's eyes, Mu Sueki's appearance was still slightly inferior to his master, Su Kaiyu. However, Su Kaiyu was the peak master, and no one else had the chance to see her. As for Xiang Nan, who was always guarding Su Kaiyu, the beautiful master, he naturally didn't value Mu Sueki's appearance that much. She was the champion of the last academy exam. Xiang Nan nodded slightly. He was indeed a very powerful person. You still don't know, do you? The nearby disciple added, Senior Sister Xue Qi is the #1 expert of the 3rd grade academy. This time, she will represent the Haran sect and follow the other teachers to the other 11 sects to lecture on martial arts. Oh. She's one of them. Xiang Nan deeply believed that a senior sister with this kind of strength would naturally be able to demonstrate the strength of the nature sect by preaching to the other 11 sects. At this moment, a floating man dressed in white suddenly descended from the sky and landed beside Mu Sueki. Xue Qi, you're back. The man smiled faintly. It was Xiang Nan's guide, Jiang Yunfan. I heard that in 2 days, you will be heading to the sect to preach with your mentors. That's why you came back, right? Jiang Yunfan said. Wow, it's senior brother Yunfan. Many disciples' eyes flashed with envy. The highest realm limit of a 3rd grade student was the 1st level of Heavenly Yuan, while Mu Sueki and Jiang Yunfan were both at the 1st level of Heavenly Yuan. This meant that the two of them represented the strongest fighting strength of a 3rd grade college. Yes. Mu Sueki smiled faintly and said, I have always been training outside. I only realized that there are so many junior brothers and junior sisters when I come back this time. Just a faint smile from Mu Sueki caused the male disciples to be intoxicated, and it also caused the female disciples to be quite dissatisfied. Xiang Nan secretly nodded. It could be seen that senior brother Yunfan had some admiration for senior sister Mu Sueki. As the saying goes, the two of them were very compatible in terms of strength and appearance. However, although Mu Sueki was also very close to Jiang Yunfan, she had always maintained such a distance. It seemed that she was more affectionate towards Jiang Yunfan from the same sect than from a man and woman. Xiang Nan smiled sincerely and thought to himself, come on, senior brother Yunfan. A female 100 clans pleaded for senior sister Xueqi to be caught. With Jiang Yunfan's extraordinary temperament, it shouldn't be difficult to move Mu Xueqi's heart. Yes. Jiang Yunfan felt a little disappointed when he saw the faint sense of distance in Mu Xueqi's eyes, but he didn't show it. He said, "Why are you standing at the entrance of the credit hall? Shouldn't you be going to discuss the itinerary of the sermon with your mentors now?" Mu Xueqi shook her head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, but did not answer. At this moment, Jiang Yunfan remembered that it wasn't Mu Xueqi who wanted to flaunt the market at the entrance. It was she who was enthusiastically surrounded by her junior brothers and sisters when she passed by. At this time, Xiang Nan did not need to continue watching. He went around the crowd and entered the credit hall to hand in the task. Next, the Haran sect will be very lively. First, there was the Special Academy examination, and then there was the 12-sect joint examination. I'm busy. How lively it was outside had nothing to do with Xiang Nan. He no longer went to see it. After handing over the task, he received a reward of 100 credits. At this time, there weren't many people in the Hawk Palace. They were all outside admiring Mu Xueqi's elegant demeanor. This time, they will regret that they missed another record on the Eagle rankings. The staff member smiled and pointed at the Eagle roll. A person in charge of the Eagle rankings had already climbed up the ladder, erasing the suns from the 100th position and continuing to climb up. The few disciples who stayed in the Hawk Palace all looked up in surprise. Heavens! The suns are going to improve again. Why is it so fast? Could it be that in a short day, Xiang Nan has completed another special mission? That's impossible. Perhaps it's a second-class high-level mission. Let's see how high that Eagle ranking staff member will climb. The people outside were extremely excited about Mu Xueqi's return. Inside the Hawk Palace, everyone was filled with anticipation because of the sun's new ranking. More than 50. Someone cried out in alarm. The 40th place has passed. Holy shit! Someone cried out in surprise. He quickly covered his mouth and whispered, 30. Still going up. Xiang Nan clenched his fists and thought to himself, a little higher. Let my son peak rank higher. 20. Although the number of people on the scene was small, it caused a sensation all of a sudden. Heavens, this is the highest time in the history of the Hawk Palace that a first-grade academy team has climbed. No, it's still rising. Those students simply couldn't believe their eyes. They all tugged at their hair and stared at the Eagle rankings with their eyes wide open. The staff member had already climbed to the 10th place, but he was still climbing up. At this moment, the Hawk Palace was deathly silent, not even a single sound could be heard. The students who were watching the Hawk rankings could no longer describe their shock with any expression, because the staff member was still crawling. In the end, the staff climbed to the peak, knocking all the teams on the Eagle rankings back by 1 place. At the top of the Eagle rankings, there were 6 words written in huge scarlet letters, Sun's peak. The entire arena exploded, and those students shouted loudly, and some even cursed randomly. I've reached the top. Sun Peak, who hasn't been ranked on the Eagle rankings for many years, has reached the top of the honor list. Xiang Nan was also excited. He fiercely clenched his fists and thought to himself, beautiful. Novel Empire. Immortal God of Battle.